providing the citizens with meetings being held at all different days and times. It also created a system of advising and voting with very little conversation, even at the council meetings. And many times when I have attended council meetings, the committee meetings actually hadn't happened for a variety of reasons. So perhaps the Citizen Advisory Board can be created to answer some of these questions and create accountability between the city, the council, and the committee, and the community. And if government wanted to help the citizens, they would get rid of the spend your budget unofficial rule and allow savings for bigger purchases and projects and still be able to ask for an increase in the next budget.
Okay. You gave me a lot there, so I will go through some of it. Thank you. FCS is online this evening. As stated during other meetings, we are having a workshop this evening to go over the capital projects and what the money is being used for. We need a time to get that together, which Ms. Coleman will be presenting this evening. The ARPA money, I'm not sure about the question for the ARPA money. That one went into a small portion was set aside for an HVAC system at City Hall, and another $100,000 was set aside for utility bills for citizens within the community that they could apply for that were struggling. And then the rest of it was put into the water and sewer, unless I missed something on that list, because I know I'll get called out for that for lying. Was it just the 3 items that we did?
I believe so. I'd have to go back and.
So the rest has been put into the water and sewer fund.
Actually, it's water, so it's.
Just water.
It still resides
Okay.
in the general fund. You'll see in the budget some transfers out to the water fund, for some of these projects, and maybe some of the capital funds with the water project.
And part of that money right now is being put into Lake Shore. And you can see all the construction that's going over there with the water pipe that's being put in. So some of that was through ARPA funding. And then I'm looking at Ms. Coleman here. The other ARPA is for Westcott.
It was all advertised in the paper, in the reflector paper, and it was also in my last capital projects where all the ARPA money went.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm not sure that the statement about the ARPA funds, where'd it go, and or is it going somewhere else? It's been allocated.
I guess what I was saying was it wasn't showing up in the budget, how it went in and came back out of the water and sewer fund.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say.
Okay, gotcha. The committee meetings, I haven't done anything. This is the only way that I know since I've been here. The committee meetings have always happened before the meeting. And then so if it was done differently in the past, and I've been here 7 years now, I only know it this way. So that's something absolutely that we can look back at. As far as the cameras for council and having them on and a citizens advisory board, those are questions for council to discuss during a workshop or to bring forward. And I know I didn't answer all of them, but we will be covering some of those when Ms. Coleman presents this evening. Anyone else for items not on the agenda? Or I guess I was going on the agenda, sorry. I started with the items on the agenda. Anyone else that failed to sign up at the beginning of the meeting? Anyone online for items on the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to items not on the agenda. Mr. Belisle.
I'm Keith Belisle, President of Planners Days, Woodland Planners Days Planning Committee. And I'm here to remind everybody that Woodland Planners Days 2023 is June 15th through the 18th this year. And we already have the applications for the vendors for the Saturday, Sunday market available on the website at planners-days.com. We also have the forms available for people that are interested in sponsorships or donating prizes. And I have those with me as well tonight if anybody is interested in those. Our meetings are the third Tuesday of each month. Our next meeting will be the 20th of this month at the VFW Hall at 6 p.m. And the public is invited to join. We're glad to have your help in planning and producing this event every year.
And we appreciate your partnership with the lodging tax dollars this year.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for your help with the tree lighting the other night. It was fabulous.
Good. When do the applications come out for the ladies or the high school?
That'll be this month.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
that's happening, like probably getting ready to happen within the next week.
Gotcha. Perfect. All right. Those at home listening, encourage your daughters to apply for the scholarship
Yes,
program.
we want lots of applicants for the Princess to try to compete to be the Miss Woodland and win scholarships and help celebrate the community.
It's a good time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Bland. Ms. Rabb, items not on the agenda? You're good.
I
Oh,
made it into the file.
okay, gotcha. All right. Robin Gibson. Did I get that right? I took my glasses off. Why did I get my glasses? There we go. Good evening.
Yeah, my father wanted a girl, what can I say?
Now, all right. You have 5 minutes, sir?
Yeah, my issue here is the water bills. I haven't been paying 100% attention, but when the change started coming, you know, it was my understanding that we would get 2 45-day bills, and then we'd go to one a month. My average bill is about $220 in the bi-monthly system. My first 45-day bill came before 45 days, and it was $175. My second one came 25 days after that for another $175. So now I'm paying $350 in less than 2 months' time. And then I just got another bill 20 days after that one for $110, if I remember right.
And that would be your
So-
that would be your 30-day.
Yeah, but it came in 20 days. And so I'm looking at $460 for 2.5 months. You know, and then I started asking questions online with the Woodland page on Facebook, and someone told me that they did a study before they elected to move to this new system that found that it was going to cost them $72,000 a year more to do that system. So I'm wondering, where's the wisdom in that? And I'm wondering who's getting the kickback, because you know there's a lot of money going out and it's not really being accounted for. And then my neighbor, when I told them that I was going to be coming down here tonight, she said, well, did you notice that your garbage bill hasn't changed with each bill? And that's the case. So now, in these last 3 bills, I've paid 6 months worth of garbage. That doesn't make sense. I don't know who the company is. Is it FCS? Is that it?
No, they're the
Oh,
ones that
okay.
did the utility rate study for us. They're on here to answer any questions this evening as Ms. Coleman gives the presentation on the water and sewer
Okay.
plan.
Whoever this company is that is doing this, they're not saving anybody any money, except maybe to put more money in their CEO's bank account. I don't know. I personally, I feel that there should be a vote with all the residents in the city or all the homeowners or whatever as to whether or not they want to stay with this outfit, because I don't. I smell a rat, and hopefully it's not in this building, but you know, I don't know, because like I said, I haven't been all that keen on local politics, but it just doesn't smell right. You know, it's not passing the smell test. Can we do anything about this?
I would encourage you to stick around for the presentation from Ms. Coleman this evening. So I know you're talking strictly about billing. The bills were outsourced at the direction of council. And I will also make some statements during my report this evening as well, before the presentation.
Yeah. Was there any truth to the thought that it was $72,000
I don't have that
more
number in
expensive
front of
to
me.
go to that system?
I would have, Ms. Coleman, are you familiar with that statement?
$72,000 should go to FCS group.
No,
To Minot.
it was my understanding that they did a study before they decided to go this route.
Oh, I know where you're going with this, sir. So,
that going this route would cost $72,000 more annually than it would to not go that way.
well, I think that, that there was two options that were, well, there was three options really that were put onto the table to council, which was keep billing in-house and keep it bi-monthly, so every 60 days, with no change in that, no increase except for, annual increases for employees and benefits and those types of things.
Yeah.
To outsource to a monthly bill, which would have cost money, which I don't know that figure, or to keep it in-house monthly, which would have cost money as well, because we would have had to hire another employee with benefits and everything else. So there was still a cost to keep it in-house monthly as well. So I understand what
Well,
you're saying.
I
We're
would
kind
move,
of,
I would move for keeping it in-house monthly. I mean, that's fine if it goes to monthly, but as long as it's in-house, because then I
But there's
know
still- I just-
it's all right here.
I understand that, but back to the question about the cost
Yeah.
increase. Yes, there is a cost increase to go monthly through Minor, but there's also a cost increase to go monthly and keep it in-house as well.
Yeah.
So it's not a wash. There's still gonna be a cost increase.
Well,
I don't
I-
know what the difference is though.
Yeah, but I would be more in favor of that, but that's me.
Understand.
Okay,
Mr. Smith?
yes.
I think when the discussions were had about going to Minol, to go to monthly billing with Minol, it was cheaper to go with Minol for monthly billing than it was to stay with the city at monthly billing. So that's why they went with Minol, the council voted to go with Minol at that point versus staying with city billing.
And,
So if we had stayed bi-monthly billing,
and
then
was
Minol wouldn't
there
have-
an issue with the bi-monthly billing?
for staying with bi-monthly billing,
Yeah.
the biggest concern I think at that time was whenever there's a leak, it's 2 months before people realize there's a leak. People
Oh, I
can
went through
budget-
that.
People can budget better, so there was a lot of discussion about that, trying to make it more simplistic for people at that point.
Uh-huh.
That's why the council ended up going with monthly billing.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but I'm.
I was not personally pro Minol.
No, no, what I was getting at though was, this is hard to budget for. $175 twice in less than a month, and then 3 weeks after that, another $110.
I think we can all admit it has not gone smoothly.
Yeah.
I think it seems to be leveling out now. My last bill was more on par with
Your
what
last bill was
averages.
on's only 3 weeks after your previous
I didn't
bill.
look at the data when it comes in. I just look at what the dollar amount compared to what my 2 months bill were, and it's starting to get on average.
Yeah,
at this
well,
point.
if my next bill waits a month to get here and it's only $110, then yeah, because that's about what I was paying before. It was $110 a month.
Yeah.
But I have a spidey sense going on that that's not gonna be the case.
Yeah.
We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the gallery for items not on the agenda who failed to sign up at the beginning of the, yes, Ms. Brown?
I just wanted to make a comment on the discussion that was just going on, because from my understanding, it was cheaper to go with Minol because the Minol was planning on using our computer system to integrate the two systems, because it's also from my understanding that our system that gets the data for water and sewer does not transfer directly over to Minol. Minol was hoping that our provider would give them that data, and so everything is basically going into spreadsheets and getting sent down to Minol to then be taken out of the spreadsheets back into their system, which is what I'm wondering if part of the problem is either computer or hand transferring data and putting in numbers. And that's why there's so many people who have weird bills, because there's people, in case you guys haven't looked at social media, that have sewer bills where the usage is higher than their water usage. And we're not in the summer where it would be the winter averaging. So if we're billing based on what the water usage is, except for in the summer, then you shouldn't be able to have a higher sewer usage than your water usage. But if the numbers aren't directly transferable, then that leaves a lot of room for error. as a computer system transfers it over or a person transfers it over. And if we're having to input all that data into spreadsheets to then go out there, how much money are we then paying to have someone put in all that data? And then the only people basically are there to check it is the person getting the bill. So I know I haven't had a correct bill yet so far out of 4 for myself personally. But, and I know a lot of other people who haven't. So I guess we need to know what the problems are, and if no one figures out what the problems are, then it's never gonna get fixed. So,
Thank you. Anyone else in the gallery for items not on the agenda? Anyone online for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to the agenda itself this evening.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Chapman, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Ms. Brentano, please take the roll.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
The agenda has been approved. Time is now 7:55. We're moving into a public hearing on ordinance number 1529, an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 1508 and ordinance number 1523. First reading. And make sure I've got the right paper here. And for the public hearing, we have Ms. Rapp. No? Okay. Anyone else in the gallery for the public hearing on ordinance number 1529, 1523? Seeing none, anyone online for the public hearing for ordinance 1529 and 1523?
Mayor Ben,
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
this is regarding the budget and rescinding the previous ordinances.
Just the rescission at this point.
Okay, I would like to submit a comment.
Go ahead.
Okay. Jennifer Ray Keene, Port of Woodland Executive Director. My comment is as I want to express the gratitude to the City Council for considering these ordinances to take on the planning for the Woodland Bottoms. My concern, obviously, with the years that have gone by, with the lack of planning, is to ensure that we can still move forward with some kind of master plan for the Woodland Bottoms because of the direct impact that it has on the City Council or the City of Woodland residents and the infrastructure and transportation. This is obviously a huge importance to the port as we look to grow towards Austin Point, as well as we see the impact to residents out there and potentially additional housing developments. For example, the Ajo development of the Donald and Ferguson families wanting to sell their family farms. Those types of things create a direct impact, a negative impact to our communities. So I hope that even though you are rescinding this action or taking comments regarding this, that that the City Council as well as the county commissioners will be able to work towards a plan. The Port of Woodland Commission has set aside some financial dollars for a master plan of the Woodland Bottoms that we had planned and discussed with the City Council. But as well as my concern is that I did not see anything in the budget regarding a master plan. So that would be wanting to make sure that it's still a priority to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ray Keene. I'm looking at Mr. Randolph right now because I don't want to say anything too much. So as it comes to the budget and the 2023 plan, that is somewhat on hold at this point. Yes, we did discuss everything you just said was accurate up until about a month ago, I would say. And we are now having discussions with the county. Anyone else online for items or for the public hearing? Seeing none, the time is now 7:59. We are into another public hearing for ordinance number 1528, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023. Signed in, we have Ms. Rapp. No. Okay. Anyone in the gallery for 2023 fiscal year budget? Seeing none, anyone online? Ordinance number 1528, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023. Seeing none, the time is now 8 o'clock. We are out of public hearing. Moving on to reports of City Council.
I don't know, I could say
Oh,
that I,
Mrs. Holland.
so the tree lighting was Saturday and I ran into Councilmember Smith. That was about the only person I could see in the dark up there, but I mean, it was, yeah, the lights were already on when we went. It was a great, I thought the new tree was amazing. I kinda miss that Dennis and them would have to go hack down a perfectly live tree for that, but I dug the new tree and I thought, all of the activities and everything that was going on down there, that was with, collaboration with the Moose Lodge and the city and, Mr. Belial, I think, Santa.
Downtown Woodland Revitalization was involved with that?
Yes, I didn't get to go over there because there was like a mega line, but anyway, I thought it was great, it was cool, I've never been to one, so that was my first, and I thought it was pretty cool,
Yep.
so.
All right. All right, seeing nothing else, and moving on to Public Safety Committee. Who's our?
meet tonight,
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Next meeting's on the 2nd at 5:30.
Correct.
Okay. The 3rd. Oh, is that the? Oh, the 3rd. It's gonna be. That's a holiday. So it's the 3rd, for those of you that are keeping track on the agenda. Public Works did not meet tonight either, correct? Will be on the 3rd as well, okay?
Says the second on here, is it the
Yeah,
third
I-
or the second?
Third,
The-
it's
Okay.
Monday's a holiday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reports of Advisory Committee, Cowlitz Wahkiakum Council of Governments. We only had an executive meeting last month, and we will only be having an executive meeting this month as well, just to approve payables, so nothing to report there.
Could you mention that shindig they had?
Oh, I will, yeah, I'll put that under my, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Goddard could probably speak to that.
Okay.
Okay. But yes, I'll put that on my list here, because I've got a small list running tonight. Downtown Woodland Revitalization, Ms. Coleman, do you have anything?
Just wanted to say that they advertised for the Winterfest this year. They also did a sponsorship with the Moose Lodge and the city of Woodland in regards to the Winterfest. We have our website that's up and live and going, so we'll be putting some additional items on there. And we're basically just saying this is capital projects with the city work, so.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to reports of officers, so I'll go first this evening, I do have a list here. We've been busy. Let's see, already talked about the COG. Had mayor exchange last Monday in this room. We hosted, it was a virtual exchange with the Association of Washington Cities. I invited Clark and Cowlitz County mayors into this room, and we had clerk from City Hall over to pop up everybody else. There's about 35 cities in attendance. It was a great meeting, talked about all kinds of things, and utility bills were a top of conversation across the state, so not just here in Woodland. I was starting to think that we were on an island by ourselves, but it is a challenge right now, a pretty big challenge, especially when it comes to the rising costs in the economy right now. Richfield down the street from us had a project scheduled on Pioneer that came back with a bid of $16 million when they started going through the process, and they are now at $34 million, about 14 months later or so. So it's a challenge for everyone right now, and that was for culvert and road expansion. So continue those conversations. The chief and I were auctioneers at the chamber dinner on Saturday, and my understanding is that we blew away last year's record when we did it. Auctioned off quite a number of items, and there wasn't a lot of people there. I think they were scared of the weather. So it's nice to know that it's going to sound terrible, that we were able to get into a very small group of people's pockets and have them pay a lot of money to help out the visitor center. So that's good. We must have shamed them into it. Sworn a new officer today. Officer Seth Thompson will be getting his FTO. I don't want to steal your thunder, but we did that this morning, so he'll be starting his FTO on Thursday, which is very exciting. Currently working on legislative priorities as we get ready for City Action Days up in Olympia in February. So you'll get some information on that for those of you that want to attend. It will be in person this year. And the COG had a meeting, and Mr. Goddard, maybe you can speak to this. They're doing a economic development tour throughout the county for those, our county and Wahkiakum County. So it's Council of Governments for, I always get this wrong. Somebody help me out with the COG. Wahkiakum Council of Governments. There we go. So the two counties, they do an economic tour throughout the county, and Woodland was a stop. We didn't know too much about it until the day that it was happening. So even though they reserved our room. So Mr. Goddard, if you could speak to that a little bit.
So I encourage anybody who's interested in hearing about their efforts to reach out and contact the Council of Government staff. But they are currently seeking input on what are the priorities, what are the desires, and what kind of economic development input the communities would like to give into this planning. So they have a lot of different kind of irons and different fires, and they're looking for some community input into economic development considerations for the next few years.
Thank you. And it should be noted that this is a different organization, not the city driving this plan. This is an overall county plan. We do play into it. We are members of the COG, but we also have our own plans here in town for growth. I know that we got some heat for that meeting, stating that we shouldn't be doing anything because we have a traffic problem, but this wasn't really our meeting. I'm not trying to pass the buck, but this is a complete separate organization that does we'll go with a 30,000 foot view of the county and how to get jobs and the economy stimulated here within both counties. Did you want to say something? Oh, okay. You undid your microphone. I thought maybe you wanted to jump in. The other thing I want to address this evening is Minol and the water bills as well, the utility bills. I shouldn't call them water bills because they are utility bills. There's multiple charges that are on those bills. Had a very interesting meeting this week, and I'm looking forward to a conversation with council during our workshop this evening. We haven't been sitting on our hands. We have weekly meetings with Minol going over the challenges and issues. We have had a number of challenges with this switchover. I will agree with the community on that, and I understand that it has been very frustrating. It's been very frustrating for us as well. However, I think this week it was an aha moment and Ms. Rabb just made some comments about hand billing and data being entered, and that's how we used to do billing. And that leaves a lot of room for errors. Good, bad, or indifferent. But by switching to Minol, I think what has occurred as we take a step back and look at the outsourcing, that we had a lot of challenges internal, and we didn't note a lot of things that we didn't realize were happening either. We've had folks that haven't been paying garbage for a certain amount of time. We have people that haven't received a bill in a certain amount of time. We're not passing blame or the buck or anything else, but a lot of what we did internally by hand left in August when an employee departed, and it's unknown why we were billing the way we were billing some of these accounts. I believe that Minol is doing the right thing with the billing and the process that's been set forward, and what that has done is brought forward a lot of errors and things that we were doing internally that maybe were not best practices. So as we work through that, I'm not making excuses. I'm not trying to make excuses. I just think that we're to the point now that hopefully it is leveling out. But we are actively working with a number of accounts and folks that have been calling in. We have a one-stop shop now over in Public Works to one person who is handling all of those complaints and all those phone calls that are coming in and doing the research. A lot of folks have called in with some very extremely high bills, and as we dive into them, they're looking at one utility bill that covers 5 months, and believing that is the first bill for 1 month. So there's some education that's also going on with some customers too. But with that, I do believe that we're finding better practices by having somebody else doing our outsourcing at this moment. Whether we continue to do that, I don't know. That's up to council to decide. But at this point, a lot of things have occurred that would suggest that our previous method of billing was not the best. So, with that, Mr. Boyce.
Okay, I know we have a lot to cover tonight, so I just wanted to mention that ordinance 1528 listed on the agenda regarding the budget, that is wasn't listed on the budget, but it's a first reading. The second reading will happen at the next meeting. And as stated in the staff note, council members have the ability to change the budget up until December 31st, but prior to final vote. So I'll leave it at that. I know we have a lot to cover tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Boyce. Mr. Randolph.
Nothing to add, sir.
Sanderson's not here. Anything from the clerk's office? I know you're with planning, but I'm looking to you because you're in that seat tonight. All right, Chief Kelly.
So the only other thing to add to your comments, Mr. Mayor, is Sergeant Keller and I will be going up to Darien to go visit our student officer who's in the process of going through the academy. He's finishing up his first month. So
All right. When can we expect him in a car for field training?
it'll be a minute or so.
A minute or so. Okay. A couple more months is what that means.
He's got a little bit more training to go.
Okay.
Like
You
I
got
think
something.
March-ish.
Oh, okay. So we have a number of months.
Yeah.
Now. All right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Goddard.
So community development, in addition to having these surprises that come up like the Cardai Mountain Mine, the stuff that we're working on is the new permitting system. We expect to have a kickoff meeting on that hopefully before the end of this week. We are also talking about starting interlocal agreement discussions with the county. This is in relationship to the ordinance that's before you and the 5 objectives that we're trying to achieve with our planning efforts. We are worried about I am worried about a compressed timeline for the comprehensive plan update because that is going to be due June of 2025, which really means we need to start engaging on that January 2024, and which really gives us 2023 to do a master plan of the bottoms. Otherwise, we won't be able to have the bottoms plan done before that. So hopefully the county is going to be interested in an expedited program to help us to have that bottoms discussion. We are also working with Cowlitz County for the flood hazard mitigation plan update. So they are taking the lead on this, and they're looking at county-wide flood mitigation plan update. And also the community resiliency pilot program. We've been looking at some additional programs from the Department of Idaho, the University of Washington, and I believe the University of Idaho have been developing some tools for this. So we've been taking that for a test bin, and we're working with Department of Commerce to help understand how this is going to affect new communities or communities going forward. So that's been progressing, and hopefully by the end of this month we should have a couple more meetings with them and make some progress on that. So that's just a quick update for the department.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Goddard. And Ms. Coleman, do you have anything in addition to your presentation this evening?
Yes, basically, I just want to publicly thank the Woodland Jazz Band for coming to our Christmas tree lighting ceremony and playing music. I want to thank the choir from Woodland High School for coming and singing Christmas carols. I also want to thank the Moose Lodge for being there and setting up the Winterfest and partnering with UWR and the City of Woodland, and all of our crew that went through and decorated all of downtown with the banners and the draping over the roadway and putting up the brand new Christmas tree and making sure the flower pots are watered even though it's winter. I mean, I think that the crew's done a really good job and just everybody working together to make that happen for the community. I just wanted to say thank you to the school, to the Moose Lodge, to DWR, and to our own employees at the city to make that happen.
Awesome, thank you. And there was one thing that I did forget to say, that I was there as well, and downtown looked absolutely amazing, looked better than it has any year that we've been here. The nativity's up, and it looks like they've refreshed that somehow as well. I'm not sure, but it just looks fresh and new and fun down there, so thank you.
There is an amazing picture from the night it was snowing, looking straight downtown on
Yep,
Facebook.
that
It's
was from, yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Downtown all decorated in the snow. It's
Yep.
really a beautiful picture.
Done a wonderful job. Thank you. Thank you for that. Not only to DWR, but also for the guys as well. Yeah, it's awesome. Moving on to consent items.
Move to approve the consent items.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Chapman, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Ms. Brentano.
Councilmember Chapman?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Aye.
Consent items have passed. The time is 8:15. Does council need a break before moving into workshop? Yes, okay. Why don't we go ahead and take 5 minutes, okay? Take a quick 5-minute break. It's 8:15. We'll reconvene.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
So to get into that, we might not talk about that, but we're probably gonna need assistance with South Carolina. And we'll approach them about what the
Did you get a chance to read that? Anything to add?
One thing that I thought was really important, but hasn't been discussed here, is the landslides in that area. That road was, that road where, Hayes Downs, right toward the center, that was completely slid out and blocked for this month.
I have it on auto.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The whole
So
area
it just
to
happens.
the center.
I don't know what the date.
Yeah, I will take a look at that map. My guess is that they're gonna argue that that's not relevant for that site, because the reason why they're mining it is because it's bedrock, not because it has the soils that would slide. So I will look at that and see whether I can add anything to the letter, but my guess is the county won't consider that because of specifically the rock they're going after. If it was anything other than a bedrock mine, that would be relevant.
Plug that too. I didn't have notes. Make sure you plug that.
And then, Red Kitty was color coordinated, so it was their
A surface mine,
colors.
which basically just means it's an
So
open pit,
pretty.
as opposed to a tunnel mine.
Is it, so is the raffle for like, you buy the raffle ticket and then drop it?
Like
from
we're
the
ever
tree,
gonna get any
or
of
is it for
those.
all of it?
So each tree has a business name, so like Portland did
Yeah.
too.
Well-
So they have A and B, and then when you go up to the register and buy your ticket,
And
you
and
have.
part of
So you buy tickets for
part of what I'm gonna do
Yes, and then you
tonight
put it in the.
is I'm gonna point out
Gotcha.
that really we should be
Coordinating,
calling
like,
this
I
the
like
Woodland
Red Kitty,
Amphitheater
and then
mine.
you go put it in the
Because
registry book.
what
Gotcha.
it's gonna
Okay.
do is
And
it's
then-
gonna focus all
Yeah,
of
and
that
then,
noise
kinda like
and
when,
dust
you know, everybody
directly
has
towards the
the
city of
raffles and-
Woodland, so.
I was gonna say,
like-
they have all the bucket, you just go and put it in whichever one.
Yeah, and so, and then the AirPod thing is like that too.
Okay.
So you can just buy them at the register.
So do you live over
Put 'em
there
in
on
there.
that side?
So-
Whereabouts
This
are
would be
you?
the time
I know
to
there's
bring
this
up to
little one
FCS
that Portco
the
did
tiered system.
that would be good on like a little table.
Low
Yeah.
low income.
That one was a big
stuff.
hit with people because
Oh, really?
I think they were thinking
with him,
like their
The
kitchen
thresholds
table
for
or like at
the
work.
income limits for
Is that, you
So-
could probably
oh,
put that into
Mark.
a part of the, so
assistance,
what do you do? Just come by
utility
and pick up the
assistance
decorated tree?
for what the incomes
What we just,
out.
what we think is we have big
These are
things.
questions.
Mine is tiered.
count?
Yeah,
It is
mine is
wrapped?
the low
okay.
income,
So we would wrap them.
cause
Gotcha.
right now
So
it's
the
set at like
ornaments stay on,
$20,000,
Yeah.
and then $25,000 for a house of
They
two.
just
That's awesome.
put in
That's
the
with the
truck,
low
put
income.
it
How's
back
the,
in
To,
truck.
to qualify,
How's
you
the
have to
thing
meet
at
the
the
low
Safeway
end.
going?
Did you couldn't even
They, I thought that.
rent a place
We
and
You
don't-
guys did
If you
Thanksgiving.
do Thanksgiving in
$25,000, you would
Rotary
be in a box.
does.
That's
Yeah.
why I asked
But where do
them.
you
They said,
set
I
it?
don't think they passed that to the employees. They said it was for
That's
the
the
Woodland
question.
Action Center, and I said, well, I thought it was Rotary
What is
Christmas.
free
And they said,
reduced
no, 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 it all goes
What's
to the
that?
Action
What is
Center.
free
Yeah,
reduced
I'll
lunch?
have
I
to
don't know.
talk to Steve.
I don't know. So these are
He's
questions
our
that
board
I
member, but he's also
have
a
about that.
Rotarian.
And my
Oh,
pizza I did
Pastor
free
Steve.
reduced lunch.
Steve.
Oh, Steve Luckman, sorry.
So I'll have to ask him to
I don't
share
know.
that information.
I don't know.
Are
And where do
thinking
you,
of
how
the
far do you
one
tier the system up?
upriver?
Big tall guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a different, that's a.
Do you tier it up to 4 or 5 kids in the house?
No, Steve.
I mean, where do you draw the line at?
But I think his name was Steve. I can't remember.
Well, I know the tier system needs to
Yeah,
be like
but sometimes I think,
8 is tier
this
1,
is a new
not
manager at Safeway and
4
he
or
wasn't
5.
really familiar with.
So in,
How things work.
Yeah, so they had to
And-
spend some time explaining
12
how.
should
Gotcha.
be tier 3.
in Mossy Rock, where we have our place.
everybody back?
It's like 7,500 for
Tier 1.
allotted amount. You like, we pay this much. and
All right,
we
we're,
do
We have 4 tiers.
that. Yeah.
the time is, did somebody hit record again?
We have 1,200 before we get charged.
Awesome, thank you. The time is now 8:20. We'll be going into a workshop on 2 different items. Our first item is, we're gonna kick it over to Ms. Coleman for utility rates and capital projects relating to those. And we also have, FCS online with us as well if we have questions that pop up. So Ms. Coleman, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay.
What's that?
Okay, so basically, there's about 10 slides that I'm gonna go through.
Microphone. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. There's about, I didn't think I needed a microphone, but anyway.
And as you talk, I'm gonna ask, Martin, can you hear, Tracy speaking? I just need to know if we need to move that other speaker
Sure.
closer to you. We might have to.
I'm here, yes I can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so there's about 20 slides, and of those slides, a few of them are going to be pretty quick. This will be available on the city's website for anybody to look at afterwards. So we'll just kind of go into it from there. So the next slide, please. So this is just a little bit of background, and what this is basically saying is that FCS provided options to council during the workshop on August 17th in 2020. And what I've made a snapshot of here, which is available in our records, it's available online. All of this is available online. I'm giving you the dates where you can look it up. So City Council had a workshop on August 17th, and they had these options that was presented to City Council based on what options we had available for rates. On December 7th, out of these options, council chose what to do. And so that's where your rates are based on. So I just wanted to give people some information that this wasn't just a once and done. It was talked about for 3 months, it was presented, and then it was also selected on December 7th of which way to go. Next slide. So basically, what's happened since we did this utility study? So prior to the utility study, before we hired FCS Group, we had a selected 7% across the board annually for water and sewer rate increases. It was a randomly selected number, 7%, saying this is what we're going to do back in 2012 to move our rates forward because we were in dire straits of funding for capital projects. So they selected randomly 7%. This is what we're doing. Since then, we came on board and we said, well, wait a minute. Why are we just doing 7%? Do we need 7%? Do we need 5%? Do we need 15%? Because we have a lot of capital projects. What do we really need? So we hired FCS Group, and we asked them to complete a rate study. After we completed the rate study in 2020, it was determined that we did not need to collect as much water for, to collect as much money for sewer, but what we did need to collect is more water, because we had more water capital projects that are needed versus sewer. So based on the water and the sewer plans. So the water and sewer plans are available online. Everybody can go in there and look at the capital infrastructure projects, It's one chapter, I think it's chapter 9 in the water plan, but you can look at it, they're outlined as far as what those capital projects are. So we decided that at that time that we really need to increase our water, but we don't need to increase our sewer. We can offset the sewer a little bit and lower those sewer. So when we completed the study, we've had 2 rate increases since 2020. In February of 2021, it was our very first rate increase after we did the utility study, and that time we implemented the tier system as well. And so council also voted at that time to have another increase based on the rate study to occur in November 2021. We did not increase the rates in November 2021. We just increased them in February 2021, and then we delayed the increase until August of 2022. So since the study happened in 2020, we had 1 rate increase, February in 2021, and we had another rate increase August of 2022. So we've had 1 increase per year. So currently, we've delayed having any further increases until February of 2023 without further council action. So at this time, we've had 2 rate increases, once in 21, once in 22. So if you want to know how to read your utility bill, we get a lot of questions because we have new utility company, Minol, who is now throwing these bills out. So what we did is we created a spreadsheet, and this is on the website as well, and this tells you exactly how to read your bill. These are available out on the back counter for you guys to look at, and it explains what the bill is and what it means. So those are all available to you. I'm not going to go through it in detail. It's online. There's handouts right here in council, and so you can see how to read that utility bill.
And I think it's important to state as well that our bills looked nothing like this.
No.
It was a 1-line item. This is your usage.
There was not the transparency that we have on these bills now. So now we have, so it used to just say water, sewer, garbage. This says, here's what your water is composed of. It's composed of your meter charge, your tier system, your utility tax. Here's what your sewer is composed of. Your sewer charge, your utility tax, so on and so forth. So it is much more detailed, so we thought it was important to show what this really means. And we actually received this example from Ridgefield because they had a lot of questions as well, and so they did this as well. So we kind of stole the idea from Ridgefield. So the next slide. So I want to grab those on the way out. The next slide talks about, it talks about our water capital improvement projects, and this is actually taken right out of the utility rate study and right out of our water system plan. They're all available online. So the ones that I put checks by are what we've completed based on what we are supposed to have completed on the utility rate study and our water system plan. So we're required to maintain our water infrastructure and our sewer infrastructure. So based on the capital projects that were called out, we're on track based on the FCS study and based on the engineering study for our capital water system plan. We're on track to meet our capital projects as have been outlined in the plans. So the next slide. So this is what we've completed. Since the study in 2020, we completed the Scott Hill Booster Pump Station, and this kind of gives you an outline of what it addresses as far as that project. So it was an aging infrastructure, the quality of drinking water, and for economic development. So that's what that capital project was about. The next one we completed was the filter restoration and median replacement of filter number 1. Then we did the West Scott Avenue water line crossing under the tracks. This is part of ARPA funding. I've presented this before in multitude of presentations at council. We did the Davidson water line crossing under the tracks. That was a Cowlitz County grant. I've presented that a multitude of times. We did the Scott Avenue connector, which is from Pekin to the tracks. We connected that water line, and then we're doing right now the water main on Lakeshore Drive. So that's what we've done to date based on our capital infrastructure plan, which is in our water system plan, and it was part of the utility rate study. The ones that we have not completed and we have on hold right now is the additional, and because of the utility rates and the questions that have come about, is the additional reservoir storage, which is a 1.5 million gallon, and decommissioning our number 2 reservoir that was built in 1960. We do not have the Westcott Avenue asbestos water line replaced yet. That's scheduled to be done in 2023. We do not have 8 water mains that were identified in the Water Capital Infrastructure Plan to be replaced. We do not have we have not upgraded our water meters throughout the city. We have not done the filter restoration or media replacement for filter number 2 or number 3. The bids came in high by $150,000, so we halted that project at this time. And we have 18 asbestos water lines to replace that had not been listed in the water system plan that we have not done either. So these are capital projects that if you of council decide that you don't want to do these, I'm going to go through each one of these and give you the pros and cons of not doing them. There's really no pro of not doing it, but the cons, and you can choose what you want to do. So we'll start with the capital infrastructure plan of the additional reservoir number 4. So the cost when we went out for this, when we did this water system plan and we did the utility study, the cost for the 1 million gallon water reservoir was $3.4 million. And that was to be paid for in years 21 and 22. So we started the process of working towards building the new water reservoir because our number 2 reservoir needs to be decommissioned and it's leaking. So based on that, we went ahead and had the site cleared, we went ahead and grubbed, we had it surveyed and engineered, and we're starting to do the design for the number 2 reservoir. And then we've kind of put that at a halt because of the uproar in the community with the utility rates. So I'm just telling you what it was at, and now in 2022, when we went with an engineer's estimate, it's looking at to be $5 million. Now, remember, this $5 million, the $5 million is because of its 1.5 million gallon water reservoir versus a 1 million because we need to decommission the 500,000 gallon reservoir. So that's where the offset is on that 500,000. So we have submitted for loan funding and grants from both Department of Health and USDA for this project. Part of it could be up to a 30% grant. Some of it could be a very, very low interest rate loan, could be 1-2% in order to obtain the funding for this. We don't have to accept it, but there's timelines to hit those grant and loan applications, so we went ahead and submitted for it. If council decides not to move forward on the building of these infrastructures, they could do that. We just deny accepting the funding. We just say we don't want it. So the consequences of not funding. So you can go ahead and fix the 500,000 gallon number 2 reservoir and not build the 1.5 million gallon and decommission the 500,000. You can do that, but you have to do one or the other. It has been mandated by the Department of Health that we have to do one or the other. So you can either choose to fix the 2 million gallon at $500,000 to $750,000, or you can build the new one at a cost of $5 million. Water restrictions, so in the meantime, if we don't have the additional water storage capacity, you'll have water restrictions that will come about for lawn and garden watering, being able to fill a pool or hot tub, restricted water usage during certain days, maybe go to 24-hour production of water. We will go to a 24-hour production of water, I'm sorry. That means we'll have more man hours at the plant. We'll have 24 hours of stress on our equipment for prolonged runtime during the peak seasons. And it will impact our economic development for people coming through, and maybe they want to put in, I'm just going to throw an example out of Pacific Seafoods who need water production. So we would have to say we may or may not be able to provide them the water that's needed.
I will say that, and Ms. Rakeen is on here, we've denied development in the past due to high water usage.
So then you know, one of the questions I have is, you know, when would be the best time to do this? We've already spent the money clearing on land, engineering surveys, etc. And we know the costs go up each year. Just look at the difference in the cost from 2019 to 2022 as we're working towards this plan, getting ready to build this. Of course, we do have a $500,000 gallon add-on in there. Then we have increased rates in the future versus stabilization, you know, reserves and borrowing power. So you know that we're required to have so much money in our reserves for our water and for our sewer. And so if you don't have that money in reserves, it's the ability to borrow and go out for bonding. And then do you want to spend $500,000 to $750,000 to fix a 62-year-old concrete tank that's not lined, and it degrades through the years with chlorine. So now you have a tank that's up there that's 62 years old. Do you want to continue to put repairs into this tank, or do you want to just bite the bullet and put your 1.5 million gallon in? So again, you can choose, council, if you want to fix the $500,000. I kind of highlighted that, saying that you don't have to build 1.5 million. You can fix the $500,000, or you can build 1.5 million. So these are just kind of some options for you. So the next slide.
Hey Tracy,
Yes.
when we look at the bottom when the state's mandated that we do either or, what
Yes.
happens if we do nothing?
You'll be fined, or you we cannot not fix the $500,000 because
Okay.
of, and I'm going to show you in the next slide the reason why. Because we're losing water, so we can't not fix it. We told them we were going to build another one based on our capital improvement plan, and they said that's fine. We will continue to allow this one to leak right now because you're moving forward towards building the 1.5 million. But you cannot let that. You have to fix a leak, or you have to build a new one, either or. So you will be fined.
Miss Daddy?
If you were to fix the 500,000 or the half.
There will be water
million gallon,
restrictions.
How long is that fixable for?
There's absolutely no way to tell. It's a 62-year-old tank. I don't have a crystal ball. It could, something else could go wrong with it in 2 years. It could be good for 20 years.
Haven't
Tracy,
you already?
Yeah, have you replaced
We've
it, like,
replaced
twice,
it, we
twice, and
fixed it
still failed?
twice.
And it's still it's still
Yes,
failing?
and it's
is
failed
it
the
about
third
a
time.
$500,000 each time you replace it? Or
Say
you
it again?
Is it about $500,000 every time you
No, I
replace
think
it?
the first time it was a couple $100,000.
Okay,
So, yeah.
Okay.
So the next slide shows reservoir number 2. There's your concrete, your $500,000 gallon tank. The reservoir drain, the drain to the left is showing that we have about 20 gallons per minute, so we're wasting 10.5 million gallons per year of water that we have produced. So I can show you, if you hover over the picture below, Pete, there will be the drain. If you hover over the drain slide, you can play that video. I want to show it to you. So that's the water that's running out of it currently right now. There's your reservoir, and it's going right back into the grounds. So we have a pipe that's coming all the way down, and it's going into a storm drain, and that's treated water. And again, that's 10.5 million gallons per year. So we are mandated that we have to replace that. So there's your water that's just going down, literally going down the drain. Okay?
Bucket brigade.
Okay, so the next slide. So the next one we have is we have an asbestos water line replacement project. As everybody is aware that I've been speaking about for 3 years, we have a full depth reclamation on West Scott Avenue. We have an asbestos water line in that road. Anytime you do a full depth reclamation in a road, if you have an asbestos water line, you need to replace that line, because what's going to happen is if you don't, this line is over 50 years old. They have about a 70-year lifespan. Inevitably, once you put all that money, which we received grant money to do this, $1.2 million, into that road, that line's going to break, and you're going to tear up a brand new road to replace it. So you want to replace the line ahead of time.
People love when you tear up a road after you just did it.
After it's been closed down
I
too.
love
As you
that.
notice, we've been closing down roads all over town by fixing them. So anyway, so this water line we cannot find the age of the water line. We know that it was existing when we worked on it in 1972, 50 years ago, okay? While we're not currently experiencing toxic concentrations of asbestos contaminants in our potable water, because we test for it every single month, these asbestos cement pipes are absolutely reaching the end of their lifespan, this one in particular. Emergency, as you guys know, if you have to do emergency line repair, and asbestos are notorious for water breaks, you really have to keep them in place because of the dust that it produces. You have to have guys come in hazmat suits, so on and so forth. But if you can do it before it breaks and just abandon it and plug it at both ends, that's where you're going to save the most money and save your costs for your capital infrastructure. So again, AC pipes have about a 70-year span. We worked on this over 50 years ago, and so I believe in my heart that it's critical that we repair our asbestos water lines as we have projects that come up before they fail. So that's just what I wanted to say about that one. So if you look at the next slide, that was a new AC water lines as they put in. They were really light and resistant to corrosion back when they went in, and that's why a lot of people used them. But as you can see to the right, as they deteriorate, the fibers deteriorate within the concrete pipes, and then what can happen is you can have asbestos leaching into your water system. We do not have that right now, but we want to prevent that from happening. So that's why you go through and you replace these water lines as they get old. So the next capital infrastructure plan, we have 8 water mains. I have gone over these with the crew and our at our water plant, and I believe that we can delay replacing these water mains for a solid 5 years. I can't guarantee they're not going to break. I can't guarantee that we won't have an emergency replacement, but what I can say is based on what we have in our records, we believe that they might be okay for another 5 years, and we can delay replacing these 8 water mains that are in our capital infrastructure plan. So if you want to delay a project, this would be one that you would delay. Again, if we have an emergency repair, you're going to have increased labor hours, increased construction costs, and immediate disruption of service and traffic flow if we have ones that break. But I think we're
What happens if one breaks, and so it gets delayed, and in 3 years one of them breaks? What's the cost to replace it then?
Well, I don't know. It depends on which line it is. There's 8 of them in there.
Okay.
So I mean, if it's $1 million, and let's say it's $1 million right now, and you have an emergency break, you're probably up to 1.25 to 1.5 million, depending on where it breaks, how long you have to shut it down, and how many houses are in effect. Because we have 8 different lines.
Where does that money come from to fix that?
It comes from your water,
From the rates.
from the rates, and it comes from your reserves, and it comes from borrowing power.
Okay, so then we spend the we'll split the baby, as Travis would say. So we spend the 1.25 for this emergency repair in 3 years. What other projects is going to be impacted at that time then? Because we just took the money from somewhere else, right? We just took money away from another project.
Right. So let's just say for instance, you say, well, I want to do my water reservoir in 3 years. Then if you lined up your water reservoir to use that funding, and then you have a water line break, then you're going to have to use whatever funds you have in your bucket. There's only so much money in the bucket,
Right.
so if you use that for something, it's just like your regular house budget. If your washing machine breaks and you used your food money for that, then you got to figure out, do I got to go to a food bank? Well, we'd be going to somebody to get a loan.
Okay.
But you also have to make sure that you have enough money in reserves to be able to borrow to get a bond, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And Pete can talk more about, he's the finance guy as far as where we're getting our money from. I just apply for all the money, and then Pete tells us where we're going to get it. No, I'm just giving you a bad time. Okay. So then if we go to the next slide, Pete. So water meter upgrades. This can be delayed. We have a estimated cost to replace our water meters in town. I have brought in an example of a water meter that are in the ground. And these are the water meters that are in the ground. They're from 1960. And so I brought this in so you guys can see. We replace these. As you can see, they're full of water. They're hard to read. So the majority of our meters in Woodland are those older water meters. So what we do is we replace them on a regular basis. So you can go through and replace the majority of them as part of your capital infrastructure. You can do a little bit at a time, which we've been doing for however many years. These have been in the ground for an average of 60 years, and they're old. They're old Hayes meters. And so they're hard to read. If you guys want to come up and look at it, they're hard to read. They get filled with water. So this isn't a 1-inch meter, by the way. You guys are a 3/4 inch. So anyway, because these are hard to read, when the meter readers go out and read them, we're required, we as in Public Works read an average of 50 to 75 meters per month for accurate reads. So they send us a data list and say, hey, we don't have the meter reads for this. We have to go out to each individual house each month, whatever ones they couldn't read, and if they're hard to read, we go ahead and replace the meter, and if not, if we can read it, we just get the read and we send it back in to the billing. So this is something that you guys can delay because they're still working meters, but if you want to delay it, this would be a project that I would recommend that you guys could delay if you wanted to save some of your capital costs,
I have
infrastructure costs.
another comment to that, because you have given me this presentation with that specific water meter, which I found very interesting. And we keep talking about delaying the meter upgrade, but the meter upgrade would make them remote read, with more accuracy. And one of our biggest complaints over the last few months, I'm just saying, and I know Mr. Boyce and I are not on the same page when it comes to this one.
Yeah.
Because I would delay something else and go to the meters, but that's me, that's up to city council. But you could delay this project, however, we would be able to be more efficient with labor and time with the rereads, and also potentially get rid of the meter reader contract, all of that, because this would all go into a remote reading situation that's more accurate.
Right, and there's two different types of meter upgrades you can do. You can do an AMR or an AMI. AMR is totally automated and it's very expensive. You can do AMI is totally automated and more expensive. You can do AMR, which they allow for automated meter reads. So because we're so flat here in Woodland, and I'm very familiar with this coming from the power company. So because we're so flat in Woodland, we can actually have one handheld device and read probably 90% of our meters in one location in Woodland. So, and then they also, and these are only residential, these are not commercial meters. So they also read every so many seconds. So if somebody says, hey, that isn't right, we can look on it and see right there. And it also lets us know if there's a leak too. So if somebody it's going and it's reading it, it gives you a warning that says, hey, somebody has a leak, you can contact the customer and move from there. So it's kind of a neat device, but at the same time, if you're looking to save money as far as for your capital infrastructure costs, this is something that you could delay because it doesn't have to be done. The ones that we have in the field are working. I just want you to be aware of it because this is your guys' choice. Okay, on the next slide. So we have filter restoration and media replacement. So we've already replaced filter number 1. If you remember when I presented this a couple years ago, we had 3 phases of the filter replacement, filter 1, 2, and 3, which are up at the water plant. The cost was about $500,000 for each. We had some new bids that came in for number 2, and it came in, the cost was about $400,000, and the bid that just came in at about $160,000 higher than what we had estimated based on what filter number 1 came in at. So we halted it because we hadn't budgeted for that, and instead of going and looking for money or pulling out of reserves, because of the community concerns with capital infrastructure spending, we went ahead and denied all of the bids that came in and said we're going to wait and see what we're going to do on that because it came in at $160,000 more than what we were expecting. So consequences. Filter number 2 is compromised. It absolutely needs to be restored, and I'll show you some pictures. The filter wall between the clarifier and filter media has rusted all the way through, and you can see the structural integrity. I'll show you in the next filters, and it's about 10 years past due of being done. Filter number 3, if you want to delay something, you could probably delay filter number 3. It's not in as bad a shape, and it can probably be delayed for 3 to 5 years. So if you're looking for money to save on capital infrastructures, don't redo filter number 3. Just go ahead and move on filter number 2. So if you go to filter number 2, the next slide, I'm sorry. This is filter number 1 that was just completed. You can see it, it's absolutely beautiful. I think that's the best our water plant has looked. If you look at that filter number 1, since I've been here going on 6 years, and if you look at the next slide, this is filter number 2. So if you look to the left picture, there's actually a hole in the upper wall, and then on the bottom picture where the pipes are, that whole area down below, there's water leaking out of the bottom of the filter. So we actually had to do the same thing on filter number 1 when we restored it. We had to have them weld in at the bottom of the wall for structural support. So we'll have to do that on this too. It also doesn't work very well when you have your media filter is down at the bottom and all your pipes for your aeration in that filter. So this filter should not be delayed on repairs. This one should be repaired. If you want to delay number 3, I would recommend that you hold off on those costs. So then we have our sewer capital infrastructure plan, and on there I've showed this is actually out of our utility study, and it's also out of your sewer plan. And we have we're in the process of doing our SCADA system. We've already replaced lift station number 5. We're in process of replacing lift station 8. We've done the mixing zone study, we've done the biosolids dewatering, that was a screw press, and we've replaced the UV system. So we're really on track with our sewer plan. If you go to the next slide, this is the next biggest project that's due for our sewer capital infrastructure, and that is the biosolid storage tank. So we submitted for a loan with the Department of Ecology, and we're working on submitting a loan to USDA next month for the funding of this. We could delay this for a year or two, but we will need to construct within 4 years to give us our storage tank. And the reason why is we're currently constrained with our solids handling capacity. So I'm sure a lot of you remember that we had to decommission the ponds down at the bottoms that we used to use to haul our waste to, and they used to land apply it. That was decommissioned by the Department of Ecology. They said we cannot do that anymore. So then if you remember, before we did the screw press, we actually hauled all of our waste off, and we paid $250,000 a year to have somebody else treat that waste system. So now what we did is we put the screw press in, and now we haul that off, and now we're down to a $70,000 a year versus the $250,000. So and what we've done in the meantime is we've taken our SBR3, and we're using that as a storage tank for our biosolids. So basically, we're manipulating the system right now to store in our holding tank. We're using the SBR tank for holding, which we can use for a couple more years, but you're not going to be able to do that in a couple years. So if you want to put this off for a couple years, you can, but then you're going to have to go and you're going to have to build some type of a storage tank. I think we can get the cost down. This was an engineer's estimate of $3 million. I think we can get the cost down to under $2 million for some type of storage capacity tank at that system. I can't guarantee it, but I'm 99% sure we can reduce that cost. But that's what they came up with, the engineer's estimate, but I think there's some value engineering left to be done in that estimate.
So is this a compromise from the $22 million project that we were supposed to have already completed?
So in our capital infrastructure plan and in our sewer system plan, they were stating that by the year 2022 and 23, we're supposed to double our capacity at our sewer plant. We are not having to do that. We are not up to the 75% capacity yet for bringing sewage into the plant, but we are up above our capacity for being able to have a holding tank to hold our biosolids in order to be able to haul them off. It used to be when we were done treating, somebody just come in, truckloads come in, clear out the sewer plant, and then we were able to start using the let me think and make sure I use the digesters again. But right now the digesters are full, and so our screw press only does so many gallons per minute. So while our digesters are full, we can't get that producing through fast enough, so we need a storage area to continue to use our digesters to work on the 20-day process for treating the sewage. I know it's a very convoluted system, and I'm not explaining it very well, but I'm telling you that you need additional storage capacity, because right now we're using the SBR tank for storage capacity, which we can continue to do for a couple of years. So if you want to save off on building a tank, we can still use this, but once we get up to the capacity where we have to use our SBR tank, you're not going to be able to use it for storage anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. So you got a couple years that you're still safe if you don't want to build another tank. I'm not going to ask if there's any questions, because that's a lot. I've said a lot. But if there's any questions, I can answer them, possibly. Okay. So here's the summary, kind of some financial considerations. So what I wanted to do at the next. Yes, please. On financial considerations, you can change the tiered, there's been a lot of complaints about the tiered rate structure system, and that's fine. I mean, majority of cities use the tiered system. We didn't. So we went into that tiered system. You can change it to just be a flat rate, but you still need to raise the funds for operations of your capital infrastructure. So you can't just say, well, we're just going to stop. We're not going to do a tiered system. We're not going to have any more rate increases. You still have capital infrastructure that you have to maintain, and there's still items in there that are mandated by the state. So if you eliminate this tiered system, you're going to have to hire FCS or somebody to come back in and relook at some options to revise that rate study. And that you're looking at approximately $30,000 to $40,000 for them to come in and say, if you don't want to use a tiered system, you can use a single block commodity system to pay for the cost of your capital infrastructure. But then what you have to realize, the reason why we went to that tiered system is because you have high water users and low water users. And one of the biggest complaints is our senior citizens, why are they paying and supplementing for people who are out there with, 5 kids, a garden, a pool, and watering their lawn through an HOA or whatever. And you have a person that lives in a modular community that has no lawn and they aren't using as much water, and so why are they paying the same rate as somebody who uses a lot of water? So that was the whole reason why we kind of went towards that tiered system.
Fairness and equability.
Yes.
Right.
So you can do that. You can change it back because that's what we had for all these years. But I just want to share with you why we had done that. And then also I have shown you on this presentation some of the investments that are needed and why, and what ones you can choose to cut or delay. Also, you take the risk with public health. We all know that, because if you have a leakage, and I'm not trying to scare anybody, I'm just giving you guys the facts. If you have one of the asbestos water lines, and as we test monthly, if we see that there is asbestos in the system, then that's something that we have to go in and do, and you don't have a choice. You have to do that. So you take a risk with public health. Also, if you can't treat your biosolids, so on and so forth, you won't have a risk with public health, but you're going to spend more money hauling that waste away for treatment versus doing it right here in your hometown. And then also, if you don't have enough utility rates coming in and you don't have enough reserves, you can fail to have the financial means to be able to borrow to make the repairs when you do have a failure, or to make loan payments. Because if you go out for a loan, you still have to make your loan payments, right? So, and they won't let you borrow if you don't have enough money coming in for your utility rates. And they also won't let you borrow if you have to raise your rates to borrow the money. So it's a big convoluted process, and it's kind of, you're in a catch-22 when you're doing this. But there is a way to delay, and if you want to delay, you have some options there.
So I want to ask you about FCS and the.
I have one more slide.
Oh, yeah, one more
Mayor.
slide.
Yes.
Go ahead. All right, I'll wait.
And then also, I just want to let everybody know that by state law, utilities operate as an enterprise business. So we as a utility operate as an enterprise business. The revenue from the rates must be sufficient to pay for operating capital expenses, and any required reserves that we are required to maintain. Okay? We can have no subsidy from general taxes for utility rates, so they need to pay for themselves. Council has Council can modify the city's rate structure if it chooses. However, the revenue from the rates must meet the financial principles as outlined in the previous slides that I've showed you. So just because you modify it, you still have to meet your capital infrastructure plan. And you must fully fund the financial obligations of the utilities. We're required to do that. So the cost of the system is what it is. Changing the rate structure, freezing rates can be done, but the bottom line, you still need to generate X amount of dollars to pay for the utility, whether it's now or later. It doesn't go away. It only ages. So we have the infrastructure in the ground. We have the process flow where we have to produce water. We have the process flow where we have to treat sewage, and you have to do that unless you want to outsource it, and then it's going to cost even more. So that's all I wanted to share, and I wanted to give you options of what you can say. Let's not build the $1.5 million. Let's do the $500,000, get it fixed. Let's not change our meters that are in the capital infrastructure plan. Let's not change the 8 water lines right now. Let's either take a chance and see if they're going to fail. And they might not fail. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. Everybody's doing things based on the age of the infrastructure. But there are a couple things that you need to do, and that is you have to fix the tank or you have to build a new one. You have to, in a few years, you're going to have additional storage because you're using additional storage capacity at the sewer plant now for what it's not intended for, but it'll suffice for a couple more years. That's not a problem. And that's kind of all I have to say.
So council arbitrarily increased rates by 7% every year, which began in what, 2010?
I think it was 2011 or 12.
Okay.
If I remember.
Did they have a rate study at that time?
No, I think the last rate study was in 2007. Is that right? That I sent over to you in an email? Was it 2007?
So
I think it was 2007 was the last rate.
Were
study.
we behind when you came in?
Yes.
We had 2.
But
I can
The
look
rate
those
study
up.
is your Bible that you go off of to make sure that the system's operating based on
Um,
projections.
My Bible is the capital infrastructure plan and our water and sewer that we submit to the state, to the Department of
Okay.
Ecology and to the Department of Health, and say what we're gonna do and how, we have to submit all of our infrastructure, how old it is, and what our game plan is to make sure that we can operate the system and that it's up and reliable.
Okay, so you follow those two plans, which cost us quite a bit of money to do, which we have to do every 6 years, right?
I
Or
think
6
one's
years
every
from-
6 and one's every 10, and
Okay.
and some's cost us a couple $100,000 and some have been 60,000.
So the rate study tells you how and when.
The rate study was done to tell us how are we gonna cover our capital infrastructure plan
Those two-
based on
those
our
two other
water
books, right?
and sewer plan, yes, that we've
Okay.
submitted to the state.
So we basically have 3 books that we're using to keep the system going on a timeline of repairs and maintenance.
Right, and right now,
maintenance.
we are on time and on budget with everything we've done in the last 5 years.
I think you just got into my head because that was my next question is
Yes.
where are we? Okay, Mrs. Dowdy.
So I have a couple questions. One, if we do not do the next rate increase that we have pushed off till February, what kind of money is that gonna cost us for the 2023 budget?
So, that is not a question to be answered here. That is something that Pete has some rough numbers, but FCS group really, if you guys want to stop what they already studied and said, this is what we're going to need to do, you need to hire somebody to come back in and say, if we stop the rates, and
Just for, okay,
right, but if we stop the rates, what does that do? And Pete has a number here. What does that do to us and how much are we not going to have coming in revenue? And based on that revenue that's not coming in, then you have to determine what are you gonna cut from your capital infrastructure based on that.
Right.
Because it's over a 20-year plan. It's not just, I'm not gonna raise for 1 year and then I get to cut 15 things out. If you don't collect it for 1 year, you have to postpone your maintenance, and then you have to determine now you don't have that money that's building on those rates that come in for the year, and you're not building on that revenue stream. So now, and then rates are going up, excuse me, not rates, costs of supplies are going up and projects are going up. So it's not just, if I don't bring in $100,000, what can I cut? Because next year, as they said for Ridgefield, for the road, and what we just showed you on our reservoirs, you know, we initially estimated 3.5 million, now we're at 5 million. And when I showed you on the filter, we estimated it to be at 350. The engineering study came in and said it's supposed to be 400 based on an increase in project costs for another year. And then it came in at 160,000 higher.
right.
So I can't tell you that. I mean, we're really going to have to do another study to give you those answers that you want. If you want to freeze the rates, what's that going to do? And what we have to really look at, what are we going to have to stop? But go ahead, Pete.
Okay.
So the rough number, and I would defer to Martin Todd, FCS, is, thank you, per month, if we freeze the rates where they are, it would be the difference of $33,583 in the water fund and $5,084 in the sewer fund, for a total of $38,667 per month.
Per month. Okay. So,
Do you want me to see if Martin has anything to say? He's online
Okay.
and he's with FC. Martin, do you have anything you would like to share with us in regards to the council member's question, Melissa's question?
I've got more questions, but.
Thanks, Tracy. No, that's I do not. It's a good question from the councilwoman. The risk that the city runs by freezing rates is a trade-off. And if you elect to not increase rates, analogous to postponing or stopping a revenue stream for your utility. And what that means often equates to, it's either, some type of utility program or it's an investment in your utility CIP. And the decision for the city would be, what do you want to, what do you let you not fund? And as a result, what are the risks or the potential consequences of that decision?
Okay. So my next question being, and Martin, maybe this one's for you. In looking over the tiered system and doing some research on my own and even talking to Amanda some, and knowing that she had done some research as well, I feel that the tier system, and maybe I'm totally off base, but I feel that it is set at more of an individual rate versus a family rate, and I feel that it is not an adequate amount at each tier system, and that it does not, that people with a family of 4 should not be hitting tier 4 every month in the tier system. And before the tier system, I feel rates were pretty decent. I've lived all over the country. My husband was in the military. I've lived in the desert. I've lived literally from end to end, coast to coast, and I've never seen rates quite the way they are. And even before the tier system hit, I still thought rates were crazy. But when the tier system hit, my water bills went through the roof, especially in the summer, and I get it, I water, whatever. But even in the off seasons, I'm still hitting tier 4, even with a family. And I feel even some of the counties around, or some of the other cities around us, their tier system is a little higher at each level than ours is set in Woodland. And when I look, it says an individual should be at 4 or 5, where our tier 1 is set at 5 based on an individual, and a family should be at 12, where our tier 4 hits at 11.5. So I don't feel like tier 4 should be where a family of 5, or should be at tier 4. That shouldn't hit the highest level. So I feel that maybe we should adjust our numbers a little bit for not the summer months when we're not watering, that they should be. Am I making myself clear a little bit?
Yep.
With that?
Here's a, Pete, you wanna go back to the video?
Tracy, could I answer that?
Yes, please.
So great question, Councilwoman. So, Tracy, would you mind scrolling back to slide number 4?
Yeah, hang on one second.
Sorry, I
Pete's
was
gonna
trying to put you
scroll.
on the screen, Martin, and so
Hold on.
we were pulling the presentation now, so just a moment.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Okay. So let me know when it's back up, and
It shows
I can
this.
speak to them.
This right here.
Yeah, I'm trying to get there, it's delaying.
Okay. So Pete, while you're pulling that up, I can certainly speak to the 4-tiered structure, Councilwoman, and how those breakpoints are set.
Okay, it's up now, Martin.
Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks, Pete. Okay. So up on the screen, Council, you see a small text box on the, or inset that shows the breakpoints for tiers 1 through 4.
Right.
So tier 1 stops at 5, tier 2 stops at 7, tier 3 stops at 11.5, and then tier 4 is everything above 11.5.
And I
So
did
Councilwoman,
look at
you're
those
just-
numbers.
Oh, so, sorry, go ahead.
I did look at those numbers, and I thought what I had read was like tier 1 was based on like winter time, and tier 3 is supposed to be like summertime. I can't remember what
That's
tier
right.
was, but
That's right. No,
when I
you're-
was
you're
researching
exactly right.
online, those numbers seem to be more of a tier 1 was based on more of an individual person and their usage in a month than it was a family usage in a month. And so I feel like that
Yeah,
tier
we would-
system does not, what a family would use in a month is based on more of what one adult would use in a month. Because online it said an individual adult uses between 4 and 5 in a month, and a child uses between 2 and 3 in a month. So if you have a family of 4 with 2 adults and 2 children in a month, you're looking at, almost 11 in a month, just washing the dishes, washing, their clothes, and giving baths. You're using almost 11 just with a family of 4, and that's putting you in tier 3 without even watering the lawn. So I'm trying to figure out how tier 1 at 0 to 5 is giving you a winter average of 4 people in your household.
Right. Okay. I totally understand your question. That the tier breakpoints, Councilwoman, would be something that we would be happy to take a look at.
Okay, I would very
these
much
tier
be
breakpoints-
interested to get further information on that, because I do know that some of our surrounding areas have higher breakpoints for those tier systems.
Okay, all right. Well, we will be happy to take a look, to relook at those.
Is that the $30,000 to $40,000 FCS rate study, or is he looking at that?
No, that 30 to 40 is if you wanted to get rid of the tier system altogether and you wanted to go to a flat rate system. But I mean, it would be within that price range for anything.
So are we just looking at adjusting the tiered system right now, or is that?
No, we're not looking at anything right now. It was up for discussion for council.
I'm just wondering what he was gonna look
No,
at.
he's saying he'll look at it if we assign that to them and then we
Okay.
want them
I
to
think it
move
comes down to
forward.
what you want to delay.
Yeah.
is
If you
what
want
will be
to
given
look
to
at the
Marvin to look at.
whole system again, if you want to look at just the tier system, if you want to look at a flat rate, whatever you want to do, we're just telling you the price range to do that, to have them come back out and look at what's there as far as where we're at. Because again, we're on track and on schedule where we're at, and if we want to stop right here and you want to look at something else or have some different options, it's going to cost you about 30 to 40 to do that.
How does council feel about that, adjusting the rates?
Yes, that's the fee to have it adjusted. Mrs. Holland?
Refresh my memory, did we not have like 3 options for
Yes.
everything? And
Yes.
council picked the
That-
options,
yes.
what those are.
Yes, that was what I brought up at the very first slide,
Okay.
second slide, that said in 2017, or whatever year I said it was. I'm sorry, my years have blended together. I apologize for that. But if you want to go back to slide number 2, it basically said, August 17th of 2020, all that was brought to council. They said, here are your options. You can do a tiered system, you can do a flat rate or whatever. But remember, by having FCS Group go back and spend the $20,000 to $30,000 to $40,000, that doesn't mean that your water rates are that you're going to go down. What they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, now if we don't use a tiered system 1, 2, 3, 4, and everybody's going to be paying into the system at the same rate, everybody's bill is going to change again. Doesn't mean yours is going to get any better. Doesn't mean his is going to get any worse.
It's just redistributing the cost.
It's redistributing the cost.
We have a different group of people in here.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I remember, is we were COVID, in the middle of COVID, when we had all these presentations. And the only reason I remember is because I was where Tracy is now, and you were over here, and no staff was here, and we were all spread out. And we had like a 4-hour presentation on utilities that no one came to. I think we got a petition. We got a petition from a group over on like Dunham Street over there. And that was when we had the conversation about discounting rates for people on fixed incomes. Okay, so that's kind of, I remember that was like a big long, I've went back and watched that meeting over and over again. Every time somebody throws out figures that I'm like, it's been 2 years. We've talked about a lot of things since then. So, but what I remember of that, what council ended up picking, what they selected out of the 3 options was like the middle of the road. I remember specifically it was gonna be painful. I thought it sucked, but the amount of money, my recollection is that the amount of money needed to fix the projects that needed to be fixed that was what motivated council to pick the option that they picked.
And they're up there on the board now.
Yes, and it was kinda like when you guys all talked about the bottoms and you had like 6 options, and then
Yes.
council picked an option, and that became the lay of the land.
Yes.
And that's kind
So,
of this.
and one of the things I wanna share too is when you go to a flat rate structure, you know, we're looking at the tier system, we're saying, okay, tier 1 is, 3 cents, tier 2 is 4 cents, tier 3 is 5 cents, and tier 4 is whatever cents, right? So if you change it and you don't do a tiered system and you just do a flat rate, it doesn't mean you're gonna get the 3-cent option.
Right.
You could now be, everybody could be in the 4.5 or 5-cent option to be able to cover your capital infrastructure. So don't think by moving from the tier system, I'm not saying I'm not recommending you guys go either way. I'm just saying don't think by moving that tier system that you're gonna be at a better rate, utility rate for your water than you already are now. Because you're getting a reduced rate for tier 1, tier 2, and then as you use more and more water, you're paying more of a rate because now you're at the higher water production for that peak time water production. Go ahead, Pete.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I also wanted to remind folks too that, the water rates were the concern, because most of the projects are up front, where most of the sewer projects are further down the line in that, 20-year time span. And if you read the water study FCS put together, and correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, it was the first 3 years of increases in water that were, the ones that were really hurtful. It was 15.5 for the first 3 years. After that point, it dropped to 5.5. Now sewer, we had been doing the 7% increase every year, and that dropped to,
I believe it was 5.
It was low. It was
yeah,
like
it
4.
was, I wanna say it was less than the 7.
Yeah.
I had the number.
I believe it was
and
5, but
I think it was 2.6% is what sewer is. So there was a give and take there. But the first 3 years, and I think that's what the public is feeling, that's where a lot of the hurt was gonna happen.
And due to COVID, it all got delayed. I remember Tracy's projects were delayed because the health department said nobody could work on half her projects because they were all gonna die of COVID. And then the billing, did that not get, the switching to, if I remember correctly, it was, we'll switch to Manol when we switch or something.
Well, so after the study was complete, we did implement the first rate increase. It was February 16th of 21. Is that right, Tracy?
Yes.
So that introduced the tier system, and that was the first major rate increase. There was another one due and the reason it was picked February is because we usually do these in November, but because of when we received the rate study and it was accepted, that's why it went to February. And then it was to get back on the same November date, so November 30th, 2021 was to be the second. But council decided, okay, let's wait until we get mine all on. Let's not do that one, and that one did not happen until August of 2022. And then
Okay.
we delayed the November 2022 right now until February 23.
And again, back to my statement earlier during my report that Minol is, I don't want to, our practice, they're following our process, and that's why, and I know that we had a lot of folks show up saying, I can't believe you're raising the rates again. Minol was just going with what we gave them. So when they were coming, when we were talking about raising rates in November, that was Minol saying, well, this is what you gave us, so we did it in August, and we're gonna do it again in November, which now we've kicked to a later date of February at this point, unless you change that. Yes. More questions for Tracy?
I do have a question, I'm just trying to think of how to ask.
Mrs.
I-
Bond, were you done?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, get it now before we move on to the next workshop.
I am.
I would like to ask a question about if we did get rid of the tiered structure. From your description, Ms. Coleman, it was the elderly in this community who use a lower amount of water have a lower bill. So if we get rid of the tiered structure, it's going to increase their cost. What is the,
It's gonna increase anybody's cost.
Well, it's gonna
in
increase
the
everybody's,
single
but-
Single or two household, right?
what is our low income application? What are the costs there? I guess that could be a question for
Are you
FCS.
talking about the threshold?
Yeah, what are the
So
threshold? What are the
that
numbers?
was discussed as well, and we all thought that it was extremely low. It's 20,000 for a single and 25,000 for dual income,
Mhm.
right? We all thought that was low. Even FCS came back and said that they thought that was low, but based on our demographics within our community, that's the number that we went with. We could change it, and I know where you're going with this because we've talked about this before. We could change that, but it is also going to change the rate structure for everyone else. So it's still going to be passed on to. There's still going to have to be a change on a normal household, I guess, to cover.
And we also
that.
compared our low-income applications for assistance for utilities to the county and others around us. And we're right in line with what everybody else is offering as far as what your household income would make in order to obtain assistance. But again, if we provide assistance to others, that comes from the ratepayers. It's not a free bag of money that comes out of La La Land. You guys supplement that for people who need assistance.
How many are using it right now?
I don't have anybody using it. I have 4 applications in hand.
I thought we had one.
So looking at Washington
I'm
State,
aware of.
low income, I did a quick Google search. It's saying 200% of federal poverty level is at 27,000 for one person, 36,000 for 2 people.
That's federal.
Yeah, and I
poverty
think
versus.
well, this is
versus
for
our-
Washington State, but
Mhm.
Is that for USDA commodities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
is that what it is?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, we're at 20,000 and 25,000 for 2 people. I feel like we can go up. We only have a couple of people on it, the program, plus we've allocated ARP money for it. That's
The ARPA is
Not
for
being
those
used?
that
Could not pay.
could not pay,
Yeah.
Right.
not to supplement.
Okay.
A bill. That
And we have
different
another
restrictions.
program available through CAP, Lower Columbia, that also helps people who are behind.
So will
that-
Fish.
Yep.
Fish
yep.
of Cowlitz County.
Yep. And so they help if you're behind. They will get you caught up and help you as well. So
I feel like we would have more than 2 people or 4 people on it.
so then
I feel like there needs to be more on it than what we actually have.
Yeah,
to
and we
remember, too,
can
not
do
a lot
that.
of people want to take advantage of it.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
agree.
It's not. I mean, just for whatever reason or another, when we had the first
Yes.
ARPA, I want to call it ARPA money, but the first money that came through, we couldn't give it away to the folks that were massively behind for months. They would not fill out the one sheet paper that said, "You're behind. This is my name and this is that. Here's your $400." They would not take it. They would not take it.
Well, they wanted it to go to someone who's more needy. That's
Yeah.
what we.
And that is a fact. They will, and I remember having the conversation that if they are a client, they will feel more comfortable coming in to Woodland Action, to Lower Columbia CAP, to Fish, and asking for that help, rather than come to the city, where everybody will know their business. And that is a lot of it. They know if they come to Woodland Action, what goes on in there stays in there, and nobody's gonna be running their mouth. It is common knowledge that historically, in this town, if your kid gets kicked out of class before that kid's even home, grandma knows about it in half the town. And that's kind of the thing, and so what we were doing is we, at Woodland Action here, switch my hat. Woodland Action what we did was we applied for, things that we could pay people's utility bills. That is not a service, very few entities in Cowlitz County will pay a utility bill. And that was one of the things that we applied for a grant to get that money to help those people, because hearing here that people would not take the money, even though we were trying to push folks over there,
Yeah.
like, hey, if you fill this out, it'll wipe out your bill, there's tons of money sitting there. And then I think at one point council wanted to shift some of the money over to, Woodland Action action to administer,
Uh-huh.
and I think that died on the vine because I don't even remember, but you're looking at USDA commodities numbers to, and how that program works is you come in and you say, you self-declare your income to be able to, obtain USDA commodity items, which are food items like your basic staples of, like eggs, cheese, peanut butter, canned meat, that kind of stuff. So those kind of numbers, it's for food. I think I remember we talked about like what the county was using for their discounted property taxes. Am I right on that? I remember asking what the county uses for discounted property taxes for low-income folks in our county. What percentage does the county use? Do we know?
I had Martin, did a comparison, I can see if I can look that up in my email right now. He did a comparison of some other cities. Do you remember that off the top of your head, Pete? But I can see what I can find out here.
Martin, do you remember on the other municipalities? I think you did compare Cowlitz County. Do you remember what they were as far as the level to be able to qualify for low-income assistance?
I'm looking right now. Tracy, we did not look at Cowlitz County, but I can certainly, after this meeting, I can certainly look that up for you and let you know what those are.
Can you share which ones you did compare and look up and compare us to? Because we just had you do that, I think, a month ago.
Sure. Yeah. And I can send you this worksheet too, Tracy and Pete. But we compared ourselves to, it was a pretty comprehensive survey. We included the cities of Auburn, Bellevue, Blaine, Bothell, Berrien, Cashmere, Centralia, Ellensburg, Enumclaw, Issaquah, Kirkland, Mercer Island, Port Angeles, Redmond, Renton, Richland, Sammamish Plateau, Seattle, Shoreline, Spokane, Tacoma, Wenatchee, Woodinville, and the city of Yakima. So it's a pretty broad range. Just in terms of general or very high level takeaways from the survey, the discounts range from anywhere between 25 to about 50%. 75% was the highest. Those were being offered by, I think, Bellevue and the city of Seattle. In terms of qualifying criteria, almost everyone was at 62 years and older. Some communities used a limit of 150% of household income, or 150% of the federal poverty level, excuse me. And then there were some communities which actually set a specific dollar amount for the qualifying income. But most cities were using an income that was indexed to the federal poverty level.
Yeah, and you also looked at Sultan and Ocean Shores, which was the same population of us. They were about 6,207,000. And they did a income criteria was 62 or older for Sultan, and it was 125% of the federal poverty guidelines, which was 34,688 for a family of 4 in 2022. And then also they had no age requirement for Ocean Shores, but it was 125% of the federal poverty guideline, which again, 34,688 for a family of 4, which isn't a lot of money for 4 people. So it still was in that 25,000 for family of 2 too, so 2 as well.
Yes, Mr. Smith.
I think we can all agree it's a very complex issue for us. I would be open to funding FCS to do some ideas for us. I guess put our ideas on paper and come up with something, and then do a public open house and get feedback from people on what they would like to do, whether it's get away from the tiered system and know that they're going to have an increase, and also look at increasing the low-income help. That's my take on it. I don't know where all the rest of council stands, but That's personally what I would like to see.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Boyce.
I think an important point for
FCS to know is, do you want to delay any projects? And for how long, or eliminate projects? Because what they're looking at with their rate study is, how do we fund the capital projects? And the capital projects are what are really, it's not operations that's driving the rate increases, it's the capital projects. So if council is considering delaying some of those, if we're gonna hire FCS, it would be good to be able to give them that information.
I think it would be nice to have a couple of different plans from city staff on what they feel would be best. Either A, B, C, and then have SCS study this and go from there. I mean, we could sit up here for hours at this point and hash out and try to figure out what's best for us. I think we would have to have another workshop to even come up with a plan.
Well, I gave
For
you
FCS.
options in there. I gave you all the things that you could delay.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you can delay the water meters, you can delay replacing water line. I mean, all that's in this presentation. You get choices of what you want to delay. Now, if you want to have a workshop with citizens, say, what do you want to delay? You can do that.
Yeah.
And I told you what you can't delay. You can't delay your filter 2.
Yeah.
You can't delay fixing at least a 500,000 gallon reservoir. Those things you can't do, because you have to be in compliance. And all of the capital infrastructure plans are approved by the Department of Health and the state, the Department of Ecology. So those are all what they have approved in our plans for the city of Woodland. If you defer from that, you have to go back and tell them we're deferring, and you have to submit that to them and tell them the reason why. But 2 things you can't defer are the 2 items that I just told you. All the rest you can pretty much say, oh, we're gonna wait a couple years.
Yeah, and I think that's
So-
what I'm saying. Like the stuff we can't defer, put it on paper. This is it, and then this project, added in says this is what the cost would be. Or if we did this project, this is what the cost would be, and then figure out if we want to go away from the tiering structure and what route I guess the rest of the council wants to go. So.
So I think I would like to see it if we did the 8 water mains, delayed it. I know you said 5 years, but I mean even delaying it 3 years, so that we're not to a point where we're at the 5 years and it's like, wait, now we've had emergencies come up at 3 years. And then even delay the water meters a year or so to wait. If we look at it and we say, okay, let's hold off 1 year of our rate increase, that gives us delaying the water meters, and that makes up some of that difference in just delaying that, where they can come up with looking at that. Even going ahead and doing the filter restoration on number 2 and putting off number 3. I think that's some of the things. I think that definitely the sewer lift station, the biosolids tank, and the 1.5 million reservoir, I think those are definite things that we need to continue moving forward on. I don't think there's any point in putting Band-Aids on things that are some major issues that there's no point in spending $500,000 to almost $1 million on Band-Aids that we're gonna be spending on the upgrade anyways. So I'd rather go ahead and spend it there. But that's just some of my thoughts as they are looking at the plans. I mean, you want definitives. I think that's some of the places to start, where some of the things you say to hold off on, at least delay a couple of years to get a ground for this year. I think we've been hit hard. Minol has been a huge transition for our community. I think the economy has been hit hard right now, and this initial 15% hit everybody hard. So as we get adjusted to it, let's ease into it for our community. And I think let's bring this back to them with some options that they can have a say in, because COVID, I wasn't a part of it. I know part of our part of our council wasn't part of it, that we have a voice that wants to be heard right now. I think it's important for them to all have that option to be a part of it. So.
Mr. Smith?
What would it take to go away from Minol and go back to city billing?
Oh, good God.
It's a
I was
very-
never a fan of Minol, so I would like to know that answer.
So I would need to look at the contract to determine, you know, how long we have to stay with them or what the parameters are for getting rid of the agreement. In-house, we still have the software, but the staff member has moved on. So we would need to recruit at least. We'd need to give some thought about if we're going to stick with monthly or bi-monthly.
I'm
so
personally for going back to bi-monthly. It's lower cost.
It was lower cost.
So if we went bi-monthly, it would be 1 FTE. If it would be monthly, it would probably be more. I think with our current staff, we've gained some efficiencies, and we might be able to reduce it from what we were predicting before. But it would still be more than a full-time equivalent.
And I can promise you, if we switch back to the city, there'd be hiccups as well. It would
There-
not be the
there-
smoothest transition as well.
You couldn't use this archaic system of hand writing and hand
Well-
keying into an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Like, in
So-
what universe does a
so-
multi-million-dollar entity do that?
I agree.
So the reads from Meter Readers, the company we used to read the meters then and now, it's downloaded into the software. So those numbers are not individually put in. However, there are some, it's my understanding, there are some special cases where you have leak adjustments and things like that where there has to be some manual input. We wouldn't be able to give the detail on that you see on this bill. You know, we talked about it earlier. We had, you know, one line for water. It's my understanding that the vision software we did use wouldn't be able to do that. We would have a hole in the data, so we would have to, right now everything's being entered in Minol's system. So what we did, we had reports generated from the vision system, our old system, gave that to Minol, they entered it into their system, and now we're just entering everything into the Minol system. So, you know, when we're searching up customers' histories and things like that, if we came back to our system, we'd have to get reports from Minol, try to integrate those into the vision system. So it would take several months to figure out the IT transition and to hire staff and get staff trained. But it is possible.
Well, maybe in looking at that, and if we went back to bi-monthly, also looking at what it would cost if switching to new meters, if that would transition smoother as well.
But those
with more
cost money.
digital- I know, but if it went to more digital,
That was the
meters.
point. So the whole point, when council had this discussion, and yeah, there was a couple different council members sitting here, but we beat this horse to death. And the point, the initial thing was to change it so people could budget better, because Cowlitz PUD did the same thing. They used to be the opposite month of the city. So one month you were getting bent over for 350, and then next month it was 500. It just was a different entity. And then they switched to monthly billing. So what the council conversation was is that it would be easier for people to budget, right? Because you have your PUD bill that comes every month, you have this that comes every month, your house payment, whatever, that you could budget it better. Because I still, for the life of me, can't figure out why one random bill will be $600 for no good reason, and then the next one's $200. Anyway, but the whole thing was we were to do that, go to monthly billing, farm it out, so that we didn't have to hire multiple staff members with benefits and union stuff and yada yada, and that the eventual thing was that we would get digital meters that actually read what you actually use, not what some guy thinks he might have seen, because we all have mud-covered meters that we know nobody's looking at. But they swear they check them, though we know they can't possibly, because you can't see through the mud. But that was the whole point. There was like this whole stepped approach of how this was gonna go, with probably 12, was there not like 12 hours, I think, of presentations? I think it was at least 12 hours. Nobody cared. 2 years go by, now it's the biggest thing in the universe, and we beat it to death 2 years ago. And so it's we spent the money on the study, we've spent money on a whole bunch of stuff. But for me, the knee jerk to, oh, whoa, nobody paid attention and nobody cared. It was in the paper, it was live, all of this went on for months and months. Now 2 years later, now it's the most important thing in the universe. Well, I think from Tracy's presentation, everybody should be aware at how much things cost, and that was the point of why rates had to go up, right? That was the whole point. It was dumb that somebody thought 7% every year just because that's a good number, and that went on for 10 years. When I remember specifically asking in a council meeting long before I was ever elected, when they were going to let one of them sunset, and I was the only person who came to the public hearing and asked to let it sunset, and they said no. And it's like, but does it pay for, how do you know it pays for anything? And so I thought it was the smartest thing in the universe that you guys decided to actually get a rate study so you knew how much you actually needed to run everything instead of let's just pick a random number and that's the number we go with. It doesn't make sense. A business doesn't run that way, and you're a multi-million-dollar business. You can't just make decisions because somebody didn't like it. Apple doesn't shut everything down and rethink everything because a handful of people pop off at every council meeting. Come in, call me names, I literally don't care, you can call me all kinds of stuff, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna take my bath and go to bed and go to work tomorrow. But that doesn't mean we go back and spend taxpayer dollars again to do the thing again that we already did. I mean, it's nutty to me. I get it, you guys wanna make everybody happy. I think my bill is what my bill is. It's something I can't control, just like I can't control gas. I can't control how much anything I get charged, right? I really can't. I go to the store, milk is $5 one time, it's $4 the next time. I can't control that. And so somebody said I was being a smart ass or flippant because I said that, but I can't control that. As a council member, I'm here for what, another year. And then another council, you guys can overturn every single thing this group does tonight. The next group can completely overturn it all and spend more city money, more taxpayer money to do this all over again. And y'all can do it forever, and that's fine. But that is why you have 70-year-old pipes that have not been replaced, that have asbestos. Water going through asbestos, and I think we've all heard that if asbestos gets in that water, that's emergency level right there. Asbestos abatement is millions of dollars. So we put that off, and that's kind of what the thing has been, and I think people forget. We had a revolving door in the Public Works Department. We had a apathetic Public Works Director that went great with that administration because they were all kind of apathetic. And then we had a couple people who weren't here very long. And then we got Ms. Coleman, who had to sit down and figure out how in the heck this town got to the point it is. And then people think I make this up, but I've listened to this woman talk since the day she got hired, and how much work everybody in Public Works has went through to get to this point, to show the world it's catastrophic level. This is how much it costs, and every minute that you debate it, it gets more expensive. We saw that during COVID. It was like her plan at the beginning of COVID, something cost $100,000, now it's $500,000. Because they can. I don't know what the logic is, but that's just what it is. And I mean, I'm not trying to get on a soapbox about it, but I really want everybody to seriously think about it. I get it, you wanna make people happy, but at what cost? At what cost? And then to be back in the same boat we've been in. And I've lived here a long time and watched the same cycle of get on the gerbil wheel and nothing gets done. And that's what's gonna continue to happen. I mean, I just want everybody to really think and remember and go back and watch the YouTube videos where we beat this to death. Like, Mr. Fredericks is probably the most financial minded person and was sat on this board for what, a decade and a half? That man knew numbers like probably even more so, no offense, Mr. Boyce. Like, that man could pull things out. And he had so many good talking points because he'd been here so long and looked at all of it. And a lot of what he said made sense. And I think that's kind of how the conversations were directed, was he's a financial guy. And it sucked. I pay more now than I did then too. I'm just like everybody else. We all do. But the knee-jerk reaction, because a handful of people come in and yell a whole bunch, now we spend every other person in Woodland's money to do a study again. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then my other and then now that I'm off my soapbox, my question is, what do businesses, why is it that no business has come in and said they have seen an increase? Did businesses not get an increase?
Oh,
Is
no.
it just residential?
No, they've had an increase.
Because I know the water, sewer, garbage bill at Woodland Action got higher.
Yep.
But
yep.
I just.
All the businesses have had increases.
So everybody did, it's just residential, okay. I was just curious, I just thought maybe they didn't get an increase because not one, I don't think any businesses have come in.
Are they complaining as well? No?
No.
How much did we pay for the original FCS study?
Martin, are you online?
I want to say it was around 200,000.
Around $200,000.
I think so. 225.
So I want you to know, I'm not saying that we should move forward with this because of a few that have sat in the audience, but I've also seen, since we did the increases of the tiered system and the steps, I've seen my own bill and neighbors' bills and everything. I don't feel it is, I feel like his continuing to, especially now that it is monthly, continuing to look, it's not evening out. I continue to see that there's discrepancies that I don't feel, people are in homes that are like, I can't stay in my home. And I don't feel like it is an equitable balance in Woodland for people to feel like they can stay in our city. And if people are feeling like they need to move out of our city, then something is not right with our study that we have implemented, and we need to relook at it so people feel like this can be their home still. And if it costs us $30,000 to $40,000 for our residents to feel like this can still be home, who have lived here for 30, 40 years or for decades, then we need to look at it. And if we come to the same conclusion that we already have, at least they feel like they've had a voice. And with COVID being part of this, I feel like we owe it to them, and I think that's where we're at. So.
Mr.
Sorry.
Smith?
You guys both have valid points. We went through all of this on COVID. Part of these meetings were online, and that is one of the reasons we voted during COVID to come back in person, is because it felt like we were going through the motions, and we weren't getting a good dialogue during that time. And we ended up getting fined by LNI.
I would say that
because of it.
We took extra steps to get
Yeah.
back in person long before anybody else did.
It personally cost me $300 to help pay my portion of the fine for voting to go back to in person. So, like I said, I'm personally okay with the spending the $30,000 to $40,000 to go through the study and maybe try to have a public meeting and get some input so that people feel like they have a voice in it. And I agree with you. We did not have the turnout for people coming in during that time, but that was during COVID.
But we were online too.
I agree, and I don't think we had the participation that I feel like we would have now today if we did have a, what do you call those meetings where public
Public
open
outreach.
house, an open house
Yeah,
to
public
come in.
outreach.
I feel like that would be a good thing to do if we had it options on paper, whether we have FCS study come in and do this, or we just have options to say, we can have FCS do this. This is $30,000 to $40,000, or we can stay this course and it's $0 and we can get this stuff done. Maybe we can go that route and see what the public actually says.
And I would love to include it in a bill that had a flyer that said we were having it, if at all possible.
So this is what I think needs to occur. We need to get back and do we need to get an estimate from FCS? Okay, I think we should have another workshop on December 19th during our regular meeting. There's no hurry. The rates are we have until February. Right now, you can even go further if you wanted, and have another workshop, and we will bring some more information back. We'll have Tracy put together a list. It sounds like we're all. It sounds like there's some. I don't want to say full agreement, but there's some options that need to be brought back forward. Whether do nothing. I'm not saying that's what you said, but I'm going to this side of being more conservative and stay the course, to delay some of it, and what does that look like?
That's something that we cannot bring forward, Mayor, on the meeting of this month. That's what we're saying. If you council want to decide to do nothing and keep the rates where they're at, it's going to require an entire relook. It's not something you can say, well, if you don't do anything, it's going to cost you this. If you do this, it's going to cost you that. That's something that can't be done without engaging FCS group in the whole kit and caboodle. We already have the presentation of your options. If you want to say, I want you to delay all these options for 2 to 3 years, just know that it's going to push your rate increases out, because again, it's over a 20-year span, and so you won't have it front loaded now, but that means that right now where your rates have increased, let's say the 12%, and now they're supposed to go down to 5% every year after that, now you're not going to have that 5%. When you delay your projects out, now you might go up to, you're still at the 12% you just spent your money on, but then over the next 20 years, now you're going to get 7 and 8% increases over the next 20-year span versus your 5%, because you're choosing to delay projects. That's choosing to delay the cost of projects, and your projects are going to cost more. So you're just delaying it and pushing, as you say, the can down the road. And I hate to say that, but
I don't
that's
push it, you kick it.
you kick it, okay? You're kicking the can down the road. So you can do whatever you want, but you're not. You have to pay for this eventually, and you're either going to pay for it from an emergency break, from some type of flooding going on, from your tank that is now has to fully be replaced. You're going to have to pay for it regardless. Do you want to just bite the bullet like you've already done and spent all this money on? And you can see which way I'm leaning, because all the money's been spent. Next year was supposed to be the year where it goes just to 5%, and you're not in that 12 to 17% anymore.
So
and
in
now,
another month.
Yeah.
In another month.
Yeah. So you're getting to that stabilization period, and now you're saying, put the brakes on. Let's not do this. Let's halt, and let's delay all the projects. So then your rates are going to eventually have to keep going up more and more and more. It's just the way it's going to work, and I'm not going to sit here and tell people that it's great, it's going to be fine, everything's going to be great, because that's not going to be the case. I can't guarantee if a pipe won't break tomorrow, or if it's not going to break for 10 years down the road. I'm just here to tell you your aging infrastructure that's in the ground, what has been studied by engineering firms, 3 different engineering firms for the city, what has been approved by the state, and what your options are. You can delay it, but your delayment is also going to cause increased rates, because you're going to have to pay for larger capital projects, because the cost isn't where they are today. It's all in your rate. It's all in your current value versus future value of dollars. The reason why a lot of these projects are costing more now is because of the supply demand. We aren't able to get some of the materials, some of the steel, etc. So that's the reason why the costs are going up. Maybe in 2 or 3 years, we're going to have more of those materials come in, and the project costs might go down or stay stagnant and not increase for the cost of living that we have each year. Because as you know, when we had the big forest fires and stuff, the cost of timber went up. Now it's come down a little bit. But that doesn't mean it never came down to where it was, though. We all know that. So I think by delaying it, that's fine. You can delay it and you can freeze your rates, but you're going to have rate increases longer down the road because you're going to be expending that now over the next 20 years.
What do you need from them right now? You gave your presentation. You got
Yes.
it all out there. Thank you. There's been a lot of discussion this
Yes.
evening. What do you need for direction from council at this point?
If they want FCS Group to move forward and look at looking at a different tiered system, we need to know that instead of getting away from the tiered system. If they want to look at a different type of tiered system, if they want to look at flat rate structures, if they want to look at what are our rates going to do if we delay these projects, that's what I need to know, because we can't move forward unless we know what projects you want to delay. And I think you talked about having an open house for the citizens. Do you want to bring them in and say, here's the projects that we can delay, what do you prefer? Before you move forward with FCS Group, and then you need time for them to put that together.
Do we wanna have an open house on December 19th?
I don't know if we can.
Can we have the open forum for?
Slap one of them survey monkey things out
We
there.
can put some stuff together then. Why don't we start there? Why don't we start there?
Yeah, we can, I mean, it's the same presentation. It's just, I could just list, here's the things that you can delay and here's the things that you have to do. And choose all of them that you want to delay, or do a vote and say, how many do you want to delay?
Yeah, you can come here and have, not from up here, but yeah, you show up and for an open house. You can
Actually
Yeah.
have
And
a
that's
discussion.
the reason why I would want open house, is to
Yeah.
actually have some dialogue out there.
Like, what kind of,
Didn't we have that? Didn't FCS have a open house?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just remember there was oranges and
It was
some
before
drinks,
COVID.
and cookies.
Yeah.
But I thought
It was
we did
pre-COVID.
have
Yeah, we got
those.
crickets and the frogs.
I think people are feeling the effects. I think you would have more participation at that point. And maybe after the participant, God, I cannot say that word today.
Moisture in the
Maybe
air.
people actually can see your presentation and maybe you have this head drop moment of.
Well, I think
'Cause that's where I'm sitting at up here.
I think a lot of it is like at your house. Like, let's say you know you need to replace your roof. Your roof's only good for a certain amount of time, and you know you need to replace it. And you put it off and you put it off, and now it's like they come out and quote you. And it was a couple years ago it was 14,000. Now it's 30,000, and you're still putting it off because damn, that's a lot of money. But it doesn't change the fact you still need.
You do.
Yeah, and that's, I think, Tracy's point, is that we can do whatever, but all these things still need to be replaced, and your rates are still gonna go up. It's just gonna take longer for them to go up, and it will take longer to do the project.
Buy some tires, Tracy.
Well,
Yeah, so I will say
I'm
that
gonna
I can put a list together of all the projects that I've talked about that you can delay and for how long that I would recommend. Doesn't mean that you have to take my recommendation. It's just my professional opinion of what I would recommend. If you're gonna delay anything, these are the ones that I would recommend.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and then people can come in here and see, okay, you know, here's a project that's delayed and it's $1 million. Just know that project, and I can do a quick dirty estimate of, it's $1 million today, cost of living increases over the next couple of years, and 3 years if you want to delay it, it's gonna be $1.3 million 3 years from now. I can do something quick and dirty like that, and then give people the option to say, do you want to just bite the bullet knowing that you're at where you're at, or do you want to try to delay some of these projects and go for a more gradual increase over the, you know, maybe keep it at the 7 or 8% over the next so many years. You can do that, but just I can just present that at the next meeting, and people can vote and see what they want to do. We can have a hand vote system out here or something online. Yeah.
So something, if there's gonna be an open house thing, something I think might be helpful to ask people is if they realize by giving discounts to low-income folks that they are paying for that, they are subsidizing that. Because I know a lot of people would like to have that input, but they don't wanna have it forced upon them, because maybe that's not how they would wanna help somebody, like they would wanna help in a different way. But I think people should have that information to know that they're offsetting the cost. If we give discounts to seniors, everybody else, because I remember that conversation and I was okay with it. If my bill's higher, so my neighbors, cause I live in a primarily older neighborhood, if my neighbors have a lower rate, I'm happy to pay it. But I know not everybody thinks like I do.
Right.
But I think people should have, they should know that that comes with that their rates have to offset the discounts.
Motion to extend the meeting another 15 minutes.
Thank you. I'm trying to direct this conversation, because I feel like I think I know where we're heading with this, not that I'm trying to, because we do have some more business we need to take care of. We will come back, Ms. Coleman will reconvene, figure out a plan and a schedule for an open house and what that presentation looks like, and then go from there, if we can move on. But yes, we do have a
Somebody's
motion
gonna
for,
have to
'cause it's 10.
second it.
Yeah. You said 15 minutes?
Yes.
I don't know how much we're gonna have to go.
So we still have
We still
the,
have action items to take
A
care of.
budget.
motion to extend the meeting another hour.
All right. You want to do it for 15 minutes? Is that 15 minutes?
Can we do the whole budget in 15
Can
minutes?
we
No, I'm gonna-
can we pass that motion first? Sorry.
Yep, go ahead. Motion on the floor by Mr. Smith and seconded by Councilmember Burke to extend the meeting for 15 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, moving on to 10:15.
Motion to move budget workshop to next Monday,
6 or 7 p.m.
7 PM.
But don't we have to have it approved?
No, it would be another workshop.
Okay.
Workshop, well, have to have it approved by, we may be having some emergency meetings at the end of the year. I don't know. Has to be approved by the
Because,
31st.
right, yeah.
So council does have the option to do a first and final reading. This was scheduled just for the first reading, so we do have options.
We could do the first reading and then make changes on the second reading, before the second reading?
Next Monday, yes.
Do we wanna,
So there's a motion on the floor by Councilmember Dowdy right now.
Motion to move budget workshop to next Monday at 7 PM.
second?
Moved by Councilmember Dowdy, seconded by Councilmember Smith, to move the budget workshop to December 12th at 7 p.m. Councilmember Dowdy.
We need more time.
Councilmember Smith.
I agree, we need more time, but I don't think you're gonna be in town for that meeting, right? So it would be,
Which is fine. It's in your guys' hands
Is
now.
Mr. Boyce will be here though, right? Okay.
Okay.
Pete'll be here, Will won't be here.
Okay, further discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, moving on to action items. Action item ordinance number 1528, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023.
First reading.
First reading, sorry, I did write that.
So this is our first reading, right?
Yes.
So we still are doing a second?
Yes.
So this will make it so we don't have to have another meeting
Yeah.
and we can make changes on our second?
Yes, well, at the workshop next week.
Okay.
First and final.
So, where am I at here? I'm just trying to read it right.
Okay.
I'm trying to. Motion to approve ordinance 1528, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023.
First reading.
First reading.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Chapman. Councilmember Smith.
We are still debating this budget, and we can make our changes on the next one that need to be done.
Councilmember Chapman.
Yeah, we're moving the ball slowly forward, but this won't put us in a major crunch by just doing the first reading, so.
Further discussion?
Just a quick question. So if we
Mrs.
do
Dowdy.
anything to decide to postpone any of the water projects, we can make amendments even after we do a second and final reading? Is that correct?
Yeah, so let's say city
Council adopts the full budget and wants to make any changes to the budget, you can do a budget amendment after the fact.
Okay.
also.
Just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Anything further? Ms. Brentano?
Councilmember Burke,
No.
Councilmember Chapman,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye.
Action item K, ordinance number 1528 passes 4-1. Moving on to action item L, resolution number 756, adopting the 2022-2027 Cowlitz County Solid Waste Management Plan and Moderate Risk Hazardous Waste Management Plan.
Motion to approve resolution 756, adopting 2022-2027 Cowlitz County Solid Waste Management Plan.
Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Burke. Councilmember Smith.
Looked like from the little bit I read in there, this was needed to be done by RCW.
Councilmember Burke.
Same thing, we need to get done.
Further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Bertano, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to action item M, as in Mary, ordinance number 1529, an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 1508, and ordinance 1523, first reading.
Motion to accept ordinance 1529, ordinance to rescind ordinance 1508, and ordinance 1523, first reading.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Dowdy, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Dowdy.
It's something we need to do while we work with the county.
Councilmember Smith.
After our executive meeting, it needs to be done, which it's a misdemeanor crime for me to discuss what was going on in there.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I'm just hoping that this gets the county in our sit down and talk with us and get things moving, because that's what we need to get going and stuff. So,
Feedback so far.
yeah, yeah, it's what. So it looks like we got an attention, and hopefully it's going in the right direction.
Further discussion?
Oh, you know I could go, but I'm not
Oh.
gonna.
I just,
Oh.
We only have 11 minutes left.
I wish I got a vote. Ms. Bertano, will you please take the roll on action item N, rescinding ordinance 1508 and ordinance 1523, first reading.
Councilmember Chapman,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
I was really hoping for some solidarity on that one.
I was gonna, but majority.
I know. Motion passes. The time is now 10:06, moving into workshop. Is there an action item at the end of this? Okay, it looked like that way. Cardi Hill Surface Mining Overlay Request, Clark County Planning Commission, December 15th, agenda item. Mr. Goddard.
Okay, I promised to keep this under 5 minutes.
Oh, wow, we went from 10, I said 8 this morning, you're at 5, go.
So this is a vicinity map. The site is shown in red. Next slide. This is an existing conditions map for the existing surface mining overlay. And click one more time, Pete. What it'll show is the 49 acres that they're looking to apply this to is immediately adjacent to an existing 40-acre parcel that is not being used. Plus there's 54.5 acres just slightly to the east. Plus there's 32 acres to the west. So in a total there are 210 acres within about 1.5 miles of the city of Woodland existing. That's before the 59 acres that they're requesting in this case. Next slide. What this slide shows is the existing parcel that is surface mining overlay is actually on the far side of the ridge line that you look at, and the site that you're looking at is there to the left, but topographically there's a ridge line that as you're in Woodland and you look across the river, that hillside. So it is right in the view of the city of Woodland. Next slide, Pete. So this is the site that they are looking at doing the surface mine. Next slide. So in relation to the rest of town, this gives you an idea. Now what I kind of characterize this in my head is I think we should be calling this the Woodland Amphitheater Pit, because they are going to be excavating the site in such a shape that, next slide, Pete, or click a couple times, as the sound comes out of that pit, it will be bouncing directly towards the city of Woodland. So depending on where they're excavating and where they're crushing, it's going to actually function at funneling that noise towards the city of Woodland. And on the city website, there is a web page for this project that links to the County Planning Commission. There's also an attached 10-page comment letter from staff, which addresses the issue that we've raised. So the fact that it's barely 1,500 feet from the city limits, there's about 1,400 homes with about 2,100, at least 2,100 residents that are going to be affected by this. That's not to mention the fact that the sound waves, the view, will bounce back and forth across the valley of the Lewis River. So there are going to be some significant impacts. Next slide, Pete. So the issues that are in the letter are proximity to the city, visibility, noise, traffic, the whole fact that all those trucks are going to be coming through exit 21. They're going to have to be making multiple turning movements at exit 21, is going to affect exit 21, and the county seems to accept the fact that there will be no additional mitigation required. And part of that is because the applicant is arguing that this is a non-project EIS or non-project SEPA checklist, basically arguing that the impacts will be discussed if they do a pit. And this is kind of like, you know, if my daughter and her, or my daughter was married, if she and her husband decided to have a baby, there's no mystery as to whether or not there's going to be a baby coming. If you decide you're going to get pregnant, it's inevitable that it's coming. So it's not like this is a mixed-use commercial development site or a transit-oriented overlay where you never know what you're going to get because the building could have multiple uses in it. They are asking for a surface mining overlay. There is no outcome from this proposal that is not a surface mine. So for them to argue that, oh, we haven't decided what we're doing with the property. They have a 1999 geological study of the site. They've owned this property since 2000. So it's pretty clear that the mining company that owns this property, their intention is to do a mine. So it's going to be pretty hard for us to not argue that they've done inadequate environmental review.
Questions for Mr. Goddard? Mr. Smith?
How long is this project that would go for?
So if I remember correctly, I think they were talking about 49 million cubic yards of material. So, I mean, depending on how quickly the site is depleted, I mean, it could be 10 years of hard work, or it could be 50 years of a slow pick, depending on how quickly they work. It is.
If I remember correctly, a gentleman that I actually know owned the other one, the one on that side. When you go across the river, not Cardai Hill this way, but the other
Oh,
direction.
yeah, okay.
So they owned one back in the day, and the reason they sold it is because they spent all their time gridlocked at our intersection. His words, that they would spend 15 minutes just trying to make the turn to get on the freeway. And so that wasn't beneficial to them, and now,
How long ago was that?
gosh, I'm gonna say, 20-ish.
We haven't grown at all since then.
And that's the thing, he's from Ridgefield.
Yeah, gridlock then?
He lives in Ridgefield, so he's well aware of like how much we've grown since then, and I was gonna talk to him before this meeting. I ran out of time today, just to refresh my memory, but I remember him specifically saying that they just wasted money and fuel trying to get through the intersection. So I don't know why this entity thinks that they would magically be able to get through our intersection any faster than any one of us. Like,
All 100 trucks. I'm boosting the number, but what is it?
86.
86. So
A
we'll get through
day.
a day. But my follow-up question to Mr. Goddard and during our meeting was, is that just 5 days a week? And it's unknown. It could be
24/7.
7 days a week. It could be.
24/7.
Yeah.
And in the summer, imagine that in the summer when none of us can go anywhere anyway. Like, I think it's silly anyway.
Okay, Mr. Goddard, I thought we had to transcend our last two because we're trying to be proactive and extending ourselves. And then Calais County says, well, you got a transportation problem you got to deal with, so worry about that first. And then we get this shoved down our throat.
From a different county.
From a different county, but we don't, but we gotta take up care of our transportation problem first. So that's why they're slapping our hands about expanding down in the bottoms and stuff. I gotta love government.
Just love yourself. Your government.
So the last one got nixed. What are the chances of this one getting nixed?
That would depend. So there's a hearing for the Planning Commission on the 15th, and then their recommendation would go to the county commissioners at some point. So at this point, I think our discussion with the mayor this morning was this letter is from me to the Planning Commission stating our position, and then depending on what the recommendation that goes to the county commissioners, then I think that would be the time for you to weigh in with the resolution as to the city's position when they're actually going to make the decision, because that would be from elected official to elected official as opposed to planning from staff to the planning commission at this point.
But could the public, could Woodlanders participate in that meeting on the 15th?
Yes. So
Absolutely.
on the city's webpage, there is a discussion. There was a workshop where they don't take public input. That was December 1st, and the public hearing where they take public input is December 15th.
I'm hoping.
So that's what so theoretically, many voices might make a difference. So if folks in Woodland don't want to hear blasting for the next 10 years,
Rally the troops.
there we go.
December 15th. Go to the planning commission.
15 minutes up.
Yep, go ahead.
Motion to end meeting.
Moved by Councilmember Dowdy, second by Councilmember Burke. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The time is 10:16. Thank you, everybody. Yes, sir.
I'm dying. Why are you dying?